I'm uploading copyrighted content on Patreon at Cultivation Audiobooks*. You can follow and request any novel you'd like. Please like, follow, and comment on the videos of this YouTube channel. It's free for you and a great motivation for me. Lightkiller Bugs, the son of the world of gods, represented the law of light, being the source of energy for most secondary planes. The prime material plane, the various outer planes, even the divine kingdoms of the gods had grown accustomed to harnessing its energy, making it a natural condition for many things to grow. Such things were normally taken for granted. Only when it was lost would one experience true horror. Multiple worlds entered darkness when Leylin devoured the sun, causing many beings to weep and wail. They all prayed to the gods, but to no avail. Lathander's face grew ashen in the celestial hall. He was the Morning Lord, someone closely connected to the sun's glory. With the sun devoured, he suffered heavy injuries. Crash! His pedestal shattered immediately as he fell down the ranks. He'd become a lesser god in an instant, about to fall if not for several other greater gods helping him. Arg! My son! Dendar! He roared in rage once his divine force stabilized, his expression contorting. However, several evil gods looked at him in a different manner. The Morning Lord was someone at odds with evil, and he offended them regularly. If not for the Magus infiltration uniting them all, they would definitely have attacked and killed him right away. Boom! Multiple explosions sounded out in the celestial hall, as all the gods of the sun and light fell from grace. Lathander was actually lucky, several intermediate and lesser gods had just died immediately. It was like when the moon exploded, their fates extremely pitiable. The gods in the celestial hall blanked out, unable to recover from the shock. Not good, Ogma exclaimed. Our plans to migrate our worshippers to our divine kingdoms, even if we can create light and heat inside our divine kingdoms, we won't be able to fulfill the requirements. Our gates were built on the sun's energy, they'll need to be rebuilt. Divine kingdoms were supported by faith, but they also used several other energy sources as well. The sun was chief amongst them. Gods were extremely stingy beings, so they'd rather use convenient things like the sun and the weave to reduce their consumption of divine force when they constructed their divine kingdoms. With the ability to warp reality, gods could indeed create small suns in their divine kingdoms. However, this would consume divine force, a precious resource that came from the faith of their worshippers. The prime material plane was wrought with disaster, and the weave had been destroyed. The gods would have to struggle if they couldn't expend their resources at times like these, but Ogma had discovered that they were at a deadlock. They needed worshippers to win this war, but now they needed the power of faith to move their worshippers into their divine kingdoms. They didn't have the resources right now to do so, which meant their worshippers would dwindle as the prime material plane was racked by disaster. This vicious cycle was the root of Leylin's strategy, striking at the foundation of the gods and shattering it. His own divine kingdom was in bother, and in the worst case he could just turn all his worshippers into devils. The worst that could happen was the loss of a puppet controlled by the AI chip. On the other hand, the gods would have to give their very lives up. Doran sat paralyzed on the ground within the prime material plane, unable to bother about the belongings that meant the world to him. He was staring up at the sky, his mouth wide open. What had he just seen? 9 heads had suddenly appeared in the sky, merging into one and swallowing the sun. And then, darkness. Darkness enveloped the world, causing him to strain his eyes to see anything at all. He almost felt like he was dreaming. The camp had descended into chaos. Wailing and weeping resounded throughout the city. The end of the world that the priests had warned them off had actually arrived. The innate fear that caused was enough for a person to suffer a mental breakdown. Don't panic, be still. Holy light radiated from the priests' hands, barely illuminating their surroundings. Doran saw only fear on the faces of the others, some of them scared silly. The sun being swallowed was like the skies collapsing. Check the teleportation gate, the bishop ordered. The priests went up quickly, but after several failed attempts they reported back helplessly. Not good, the door to the divine kingdom has been destroyed. The Lord's divine kingdom has shifted as well, so we'll need to relocate. Then what are you waiting for? The bishop frowned, but very soon his expression changed again. The Lord has sent a decree. Stop all plans to shift the worshippers. Fear shrouded the bishop's face as he spoke of the holy decree word by word. What? The priests were shaken. All along they'd believed that the Lord's divine kingdom would save them even if the prime material plane lost the sun and headed for doom. However, the plans had been halted. It was like they'd been kicked off the ark that was supposed to shelter them from the apocalypse. The news wasn't kept secret, spreading very quickly. The refugees quickly began to howl and clamor, with even the paladins and knights unable to maintain order anymore. They themselves could no longer determine their own future and fate. There were even some who joined the ranks of the refugees in their outburst. Everyone, quiet. The bishop saw things go south, but it was already too late to fix the situation. The clamor grew louder and louder, eventually becoming a violent mob. Doran was caught up as well. A wave of rioters surged forth, stomping, kicking, and cursing incessantly. Many were trampled to death under the stampede, grabbing the priests and knight in despair as they used any and every weapon available to them to vent their resentment and despair. Some officials were even torn to shreds. The mob finally lit a large fire, tossing everyone who couldn't escape inside it. The priests and knights were gobbled up by the fire as the rioters watched their struggles in happiness. Buzz. Doran was at the outer perimeter of the rioters, still managing to maintain his rationality. It was at this moment that his ears picked up a large buzzing noise. Strange, what's that? He raised his head, seeing a giant green bee in front of him. It opened its mouth, letting more bugs fall down. Arg! The rioter closest to the fire had his face pierced by the vile bugs, each the size of a human head. Their sharp stings immediately pierced through his skin, causing him to leak blood profusely as he screamed in agony. The wailing suddenly stopped. The bug had already pierced through his brain. Arg! Monster! Monster! Screams resounded as everyone beat a retreat, clearing up the area quickly. Adventurers and soldiers moved forward, attacking the bodies of these bugs with sharp swords. A corrosive green substance fell to the ground as the bugs died, but the few kills had no impact whatsoever. The bugs began to blot out the skies, with hundreds of thousands, even millions of them descending upon the prime material plane. Several professionals were killed in a short time. The buzzing continued to grow louder, coupling with the screams to form a sort of living hell. It's fire. They were attracted by the fire. Doran's outstanding observational abilities led him to discover that there were more bugs gathered around the fire. He screamed out his discovery, dropping the torch in his hands as he ran into the darkness. Your Excellency Leylin, what do you think of this batch of lightkiller bugs? A giant colony of hives had been erected within the marshlands of the prime material plane, giant green bugs swarming out from the hives. Leylin was alongside Mother Core, looking at these bugs that blotted out the sky, destroying everything in their paths. This is a lower bound of the colony's strength. Once enough flesh and souls are harvested, it will evolve to produce stronger and stronger units comparable to morning stars and even breaking dawns. The strongest broodmothers could even become beings of law. Mother Core seemed to be flaunting to Leylin. There's already 40 different hives here. Our final target is to have them kill all the humans in the prime material plane, she said indifferently. Even billions of lives were of no concern to an existence on her level. I really do have to thank you for your help. Mother Core was thankful for Leylin devouring the sun. Her innate speed couldn't let her enter the barrens of doom and despair as fast or as easily as Leylin could from the fugue plane, so she'd only been able to watch on as Leylin completed the task. With you devouring the sun, our preparations are now complete. Mother Core's massive figure appeared, and a killing intent emanated from her body. In this final war, we must destroy the glory of the gods. Darkness, darkness. Many worlds had been thrust into a sudden darkness. The sun in the world of gods was the core of many planes, and it was undoubtedly essential to the growth of many beings. Days after Leylin devoured it, temperatures had plummeted down to 0 degrees in the various planes. The frigid cold seeped through the worlds, affecting the prime material plane greatest of all. Without the radiance of the sun, life had entered a standstill. The gods lost a powerful source of energy, and were rendered unable to bring more worshippers into their divine kingdom. The survivors of the prime material plane would come to call this period the Dark Ages, a time ruled by death and solitude, famine and plague, a generation where all hope was lost. 3 days after the sun was devoured, the prime material plane had turned into an icy hell. Large areas of growth withered within the month, dying without sunlight to nurture them. All food supplies were depleted by the year, as famine struck the world. However, even the weakest and smallest of lives were astonishingly resilient. The creatures of the prime material plane were like cockroaches in the darkness, eking out an existence even as civilization was replaced by savagery. Even the beloved humans turned into barbarians. Year 5 of the Dark Ages, where Fallen Island had been located in the past. A portal opened up from Badr, and Leylin's figure stepped out. Although this was just a clone, the might of a being of law was still enough to shake the lands. It's already become like this. His mind scanned his family's lands in but a moment. The Pearl of the South was now filled with death, the gray limestone walls dusty and about to break. Skeletons littered the ground, with absolutely no traces of human life in the vicinity. Even other creatures were few and far between. Chirp. Several black figures scrambled out of a pile of bones, blinking their large green eyes. Their pupils were like two jade flames in the darkness as they looked around and hurriedly left the area. Rats. Leylin expressed kindness and gentility to such weak creatures that would never be able to harm him. If not, a tiny bit of his magus radiation would kill all life here. Adaptation to the environment is necessary, huh? Leylin recorded the figures of those rats in his AI chip. They were 10 times as large as they were before the Dark Ages, the fur changing color from black to more gray as it grew thicker to keep them warm. The mutation is too fast, just a few years. Is this happening under the influence of the laws in the world? The Overgod is still unwilling to see the prime material plane perish just like that, Leylin sighed. Evolution normally required tens or even hundreds of thousands of years, determined by the natural environment of the creature. However, even though it was sleeping, the world could bring about such changes much faster, giving the inhabitants of the world a chance to adapt to their surroundings. As the rats scurried away, the change was now more evident than before. So the animals had their genetics adjusted to the environment, but the humans seemed to be a little bit slower. The island told Leylin enough to extrapolate to the current situation of the world. The gods are paying more attention. It seems like they still want to migrate their worshippers. Leylin's motive of devouring the sun wasn't just to destroy the prime material plane. The world of gods had a unique system of laws to it, in which the sun had played an extremely important part. Its loss was like a building losing its foundation, causing many mysterious changes like the shift of spacetime coordinates. This affected the divine kingdoms as well. The gods fumbled to find the new coordinates of their divine kingdoms, unable to attend to the changes in the prime material plane. It had taken them years to regain their bearing, stabilizing their own camps in the prime material plane before beginning to launch a counterattack. Leylin's clone came to the prime material plane under such circumstances, exploring the changes caused by the Dark Ages and the influence of the gods on the land. Desolate, incomparably desolate, the clone retracted all the radiance of its aura, looking just like a regular wizard as he made his way towards the continent. Even the depths of the ocean had few creatures now. Even as the perpetrator, Leylin released a sigh as he saw these circumstances. Of course, there was a limit to his sympathy. It wasn't like he'd make a different decision if the events played out the same way. The only good gods to the Magi were those who'd fallen, so they would take all measures to weaken their opponents. The disorderly survivors in the mainland were unaware of the events in the southern seas, and even if they did, they wouldn't care one bit. Right now, they'd already grown completely numb to everything. Surviving and fighting were their only concerns. Civilization forgotten as savagery took its place. The glory of the prime material plane was gone in a mere few years, only leaving behind zombies in its wake. I'm going out. Doran gripped the jacket and leather armor on his body. The dirty leather gave off a putrid stench, filled with traces of blood. However, despite the number of patches on it, he hugged his buffed jacket tightly, giving him a bit of warmth in the frigid cold. Come back safely. A voice sounded from the short room behind him, a pair of beautiful eyes in the doorway. The eyes seemed to fill his body with vigor and strength, making him forget all regrets as he left the hut and strode forward. The icy winds whistled, the walls of the city encased in a layer of ice that caused Doran's memories to switch to his warm hut. However, the hunger he felt right now reminded him of something. It wasn't just himself. The lady waiting for him back home would die of hunger if he couldn't find anything. Damn it! Doran cursed, clenching the only valuable item he owned, a gleaming sword, and walking forward. He'd been living this life ever since the Dark Ages, thinking many times that this was only a nightmare. However, this nightmare was so long it caused him to weep. He'd only found the secret of the bugs by chance back in that camp, being able to escape because he was at the edge of the mob. He'd conveniently helped himself to a dead paladin's sword then, the same sword that was now his treasure. However, all of his luck had been used up in his escape. There was still plenty of food. Even if crops couldn't be grown anymore, they already had abundant harvests. He'd roamed through an empty village, using its resources to feed himself for over a month. However, those days did not last. Food ran out, plague spread once more, and the bugs stole the lives of the people. He tried to join several mercenary groups, but he couldn't last for more than a month. Either the plague or the hunger took them every time, leaving him alone behind. The bugs had gotten smarter as well, attacking the humans in groups. What terrified him was that those green lightkiller bugs were the lowest life forms of the beasts. Their strength had grown continuously over the years, and Doran had met one the height of a 2-story building already. It seemed like a massive red bug that crunched a paladin in one of his parties into 2 pieces. Several close shaves with death later, Doran had settled himself in this area. He looked around once more in caution. This place was a normal gathering point, seeming like an extremely large refugee camp, but there were specialities to it. The walls were extremely thick, and windows were small or non-existent. Spears were laid around the circumference, making it look like a small fortress. After the survivors had escaped from the first onslaught of the bugs, they had depended on these defenses. Some of the huts even had bloodstains of the bugs on their roofs. A distant war horn sounded at this moment, and more warriors walked out of their rooms and converged into a large army. The atmosphere grew stifling, and all that could be heard was the cries of the women. Survival Doran surveyed his surroundings. There were many hardened soldiers here, determination written on their faces. These armored troops merged into a main group as they walked along the streets, forming a powerful black current. The soldiers varied in age, from those just in their teens to old white-haired men. There were even some muscular women amongst their ranks. Although this made them look extremely disorderly, that was suppressed by their unique auras. The struggle of the Dark Ages had awakened the cold nature in them that allowed them to survive countless life and death situations. They shared spaces with the bugs and the beasts to eke out a living, struggling no matter where they were. The people from before these times would not be able to comprehend their thought process. Even a former carpenter like Doran was confident he could kill one of the town guards of his old village head on now. I have to return, I have to. For Lena. Doran made up his resolve as he opened a large metal gate. Thinking of the figure waiting for him at home, he felt rejuvenated as he moved out. Although he didn't know why he'd been soft enough to save her back then, Doran had found a partner who could understand him and whom he depended on as well. Their relationship was what lasted him through countless encounters that would have killed him, even doctors saying he was a man who'd climbed out of his grave. I don't know whether I'll live to tomorrow, but the next time, I'm asking for her hand. He rubbed his chest, exhaling a cold breath. Doran. A powerful yet skinny black hand clapped on Doran's shoulder, the impact almost causing him to fall to the ground. Doran turned around, elation in his expression. Big brother Jimmy. The person who'd patted him was a tall lanky youth. He had a cow horn helmet, carrying a large battle axe by his side. Even if the blade was chipped, the sheer weight of this 100-pound weapon would cause others to flinch. There were several other warriors beside him, forming a small party. Jimmy seemed to be held in high regard amongst them. Haha, kiddo. I knew the lightkiller bug acid wouldn't kill you. Jimmy seemed extremely excited as handed a leather pouch to Doran. Come, have a drink. Ooh. Doran salivated, taking a careful sip after he heard several gulps around him. A powerful sour and spicy taste ran down his throat to his stomach, causing him to feel much warmer than before. Strong wine. The warriors around him said in envy. Any strong wines went for sky-high prices in these times. A wine pouch was akin to a second life in the frigid wilderness. Many members of the party looked at Doran strangely, but eventually turned away after he handed the pouch back to Jimmy. Who were they kidding? The Skullcrusher's name resounded throughout the region. Even if Jimmy looked like a pole, the battle axe in his hands had already smashed in the heads of several people larger than him. Sometimes, survivors were more dangerous than the bugs. Just for a small bag of wheat, clean water, or even a piece of jerky, 2 people would fight to the death. Doran himself had encountered this scenario many times. However, because of this, he had a good impression on Jimmy's generosity. Being able to retain some of his principles and kindness at times like this was really rare. Even if Jimmy had wished to make use of him, there was nothing wrong with it. After all, such charisma and sincerity was rare even amongst leaders. If Jimmy wanted to use him, that meant that he had a certain value, did it not? Doran clenched onto the fine metal sword in his hands. Haha, how is it? Are you still joining us for the mission this time? Jimmy rubbed his bald head, his blue eyes shimmering with sincerity. No, I need supplies to tide through the cold this time. I also need to get medicine or healing scrolls. Lena's caught a cold recently and I'm rather worried. Doran's face turned red. Even Jimmy's party would have to sacrifice lives to get everything he needed. If it's like that, Jimmy rubbed his chin. So I'll be going solo this time, Doran said after some hesitation. Jimmy grabbed his shoulders and guffawed. I never thought that our little Doran would turn into a big man. Haha, very well. You can take an additional set from my spoils. Thank you, big brother Jimmy. Doran was extremely moved, and tears almost streamed down both his cheeks. Don't be this wishy-washy like a woman. Hurry and follow. Jimmy hoisted his battle axe and walked out of the fortress doors. This fortress had tall towers in the outermost areas, the central regions being fortified as well. Even if the outer portions were breached, they could fall back and tighten the perimeter. The leader was at the center, alongside the army and the professionals. Classism had persisted into the Dark Ages. Someone like Doran could only squeeze his family into the outermost unprotected regions. They were in the most danger from the beast horde, surviving the greatest casualties. This was why their homes were built like small forts. Doran's greatest wish other than marrying Lena was to bring her to the core of the fort. Rumor had it that there were powerful spellcasters guarding the area, making it the safest place in the mainland. Each and every family had the provision of red wine and bread. Even before the Dark Ages, this was something that Doran had yearned for. However, the wizards, haven't they already lost their abilities to cast magic? After all, he was still marred with guilt about the events in Old Holdman's villa. Still, the fortress relied on magic to repel the bugs and survive, so there was no need to question its existence. Doran looked towards the outermost fortress walls. A sturdy granite tower was present there, with traces of blood and internal fluids of the bugs. Each platform had a small black cannon perched atop it. Bright runes glowed inside the cannon shafts, reassuring the people who saw them. This wasn't the first time Doran was looking at these cannons that reaped lives in every bug attack. Even powerful red worms abhorred them. Rumble. A powerful mechanism was unlocked. Drawing down the bridge as a large troop of cavalry wearing exquisite armor trotted out in rank and file, causing many mercenaries to look on in envy. This was a regiment of professionals, possessing astounding battle might. Once someone was drafted into the army, even if they weren't sent to the core, they'd be sent to relatively safe areas and given a steady supply of food. This was a lifelong dream to many commoners. The strongest adventuring parties paled in comparison to the soldiers, making them look like a counterfeit product. Few people, like Jimmy, didn't feel inferior to the troops, instead competing with them on the same level. One bug is worth one contribution point. I already have 90, so I only need 10 more to enter the inner areas and become a member of the army. Doran blazed with desire. After all, this meant that he was one step closer to his dreams. Big brother Jimmy had already amassed the necessary contribution points, but because he had several brothers staying outside, he has remained there too. Doran was extremely impressed with Jimmy. Thud, thud. The army entered formation at this moment, causing a solemn atmosphere that silenced the adventurers. Whoosh. The cold wind blew, causing the silvery moon flag held by one of the knights to flap in the wind, radiating a strange glow. Jimmy blinked his eyes, and saw several black spots in the skies. Without knowing why, even with the absence of the sun, his eyes had grew accustomed to the darkness. At the very least, with the help of the stars in the skies, what was said to be the light of the gods, divine kingdoms, he could already see clearly in a 50 meters radius. Those several black dots grew larger, and when they closed in, the onlookers exclaimed in surprise. It had been the figures of several wizards flying in the air. My people, a female wizard wearing silver-white armor spoke. Her appearance was obscure, yet her voice carried the vicissitudes of time, drawing the alarmed voices and gasps of the people. It's the city lord, Silvery Moon Queen. Woo, woo. Doran bowed just like the rest of the people in the surroundings. No matter what, being able to seek protection under her when the world had ended was enough for him to express his gratitude and thanks. It's just that the queen standing in midair didn't have much joy on her face, seeming to have aged greatly. Spells. The former queen of Silvery Moon had become the lord protecting the human fortresses of the north. The last hope of the human race looked down on the army beneath her, a bitter smile hidden beneath her glory. Being Mystra's blood daughter, Illustrial had once felt like the sky was going to fall when Mystra died. Even though she was a powerful legendary wizard with a trace of divinity in her blood, she knew full well that leading the humans of the north without her mother's support would be extremely difficult. The Orc Empire was looming right over their heads. On top of that, the Silvery Moon Alliance was a union of magic, led mainly by wizards. The loss of the Weave absolutely shattered their unity. Fortunately, the Orcs had come to an agreement with them due to the invasion of the Magi. They didn't send troops to wipe the alliance out. However, the situation had turned worse after a few days. The horrifying plagues had swept their lands, and the Dark Ages had come knocking on the door. Illustrial herself was a lucky soul. Her peak legendary power allowed her to cast spells independently of the Weave, so despite stumbling along the way like a child at first, she managed to gain the ability to protect herself. Wizards under rank 20 were like unborn fetuses, unable to survive being without the Weave, but legendary wizards were at least newborn infants at this moment, able to tide through the destruction of the Weave. On top of all this, the trace of divinity she'd inherited from the goddess of the Weave allowed Illustrial a chance to succeed her mother as the goddess of the Weave. The gods assisted to secure the regime of the Silvery Moon Alliance, albeit barely. Still, she had to abandon a majority of her lands and build this final fortress, holding up against the catastrophic attacks of the insects. If the orcs weren't considered, the survivors in this camp were the last lifeblood of the North. Am I doing the right thing? Illustrial was a queen in an era of peace. Even in such critical moments, she was racked with indecision. I have updates from the south, my queen. Old Mage Elminster stepped through a portal at that moment, dressed in a simple flax robe as he stood behind her like a humble follower bowing to her words. I've just obtained confirmation that a nest of the bugs popped up about 100 miles south of us. The Gloomwood has been corroded by marshland. Illustrial's heart skipped a beat. This was definitely the worst news for this camp. She'd come to learn that the tide of bugs originated from the massive colonies of hives. The appearance of a nest in an area spelled its death, an endless wave of insects engulfing the entire land and turning it barren. Damn it! We put so much effort into making this place arable. We've already cleared the lands, just one harvest. She lowered her voice. It's too late to move again. It took all we had to build this fortress. Even if we wanted to, the bugs are everywhere now. Where can we go? Looking at Illustrial's mournful smile, Elminster's heart was filled with bitterness. How are the wizards doing? She seemed to make up her mind about something after a long time. Still training. Even the best of them can only use rank 4 spells, and this was someone at rank 20 before the catastrophe, just a step away from becoming legendary. Elminster heaved a sigh. They'd had to return to their roots since the collapse of the Weave, using the elemental particles of the world to gather energy from their spiritual force and cast spells. Thankfully, wizards had always been performing research on the arcanists, and finding training methods in the field wasn't a big problem. They'd set up everything pretty soon given Silverymoon's accumulated information and their talents. Even the gods couldn't resist using the arcanist inheritances in this situation. The churches didn't abolish the prohibition openly because that would tarnish the gods' dignity, but the research was no secret. Sadly, the talented wizards all turned inferior when it came to the arcanist inheritance. The convenience the Weave had afforded them had caused a drop in their quality. Only with it destroyed did many wizards begin to realize how incapable they were. With their rigid lines of thought, some older wizards didn't even acknowledge the possibility of changing their path. They were having suicidal thoughts. In spite of Illustrial's unconditional support and Silverymoon's rich supplies, the best they could do right now was still a rank 4 spell. Detached from the Weave, the wizards now realized how hard spells were to control, demanding more ability and finesse. Many died trying to cast the new spells. Leave the last batch behind, but get all the rest. It took a long while for her to make this tough decision, and a teardrop rolled down Illustrial's cheek. She arrived above the army, waving them to silence. These bugs have taken our everything, and now they're coming for our lives. Her voice echoed throughout the region. A vicious colony has popped up close to us, less than 100 miles away. We're out of supplies and fortification scrolls, and we won't be able to build another city. Tell me, then. Are we going to keep silent in the face of this threat? Doran held tightly onto the weapon in his hands, as if that was the only way he could get a sense of security. So we're actually in such dangerous situation. A silent thought of fiery anger surfaced in his mind. No, I belong to this place, I will never leave. Jimmy started hitting his shield with his axe. Never. We will never leave. A fearsome growl shook the entire fort. Great. I shall accompany you all on this crusade. Let us fight for our survival. Illustrial promised. For survival. The army set off in swift fury. Illustrial kept to her promise, leading the troop from the front on her white horse. Her divinity had allowed her to maintain her power through the collapse of the weave, so the presence of such a powerful leader definitely lifted the spirits of the army. Our team will be in charge of the patrol today. The army wended along on its way forward. Unlike a regular troop, Doran's team was a little disorganized. They weren't in high spirits regardless of Jimmy's encouragement. The city was their last hope. If this hope was broken, even Doran would lose the courage to survive in this chaotic world. Come with me, Doran. Let's go on patrol. Jimmy waved his axe, unable to withstand the atmosphere. All right. Doran didn't like the stifling aura here either, so he quickly stood up when Jimmy called him. Shrouded in darkness, the continent was full of unknown dangers. Even though many creatures had died out, unable to adapt to the new conditions, those that didn't had become much more cunning and cruel. Doran had heard rumors of creatures from the Underdark, D-Riders and horrifying claw monsters that wanted to use the loss of the sun to blast out from their prisons and wantonly invade the mainland. They were backed by their own pantheon, headed by the Spider Queen, Lolth. Her decision was absolutely correct. The celestial gods had to give way to the Underdark in the Dark Ages for manpower and supplies, letting them migrate from down below to the mainland. The Drow were rumored to have built a city on the surface already. The rumors said men were the lowest of slaves amongst the Drow, alongside other species. They could be sacrificed to the gods at any time. Despite all this, a large number of wandering species were seeking shelter from the Drow just to survive. What a pity. Lolth is an evil god, and my lord. Doran's eyes flashed in struggle, but he soon turned firm. Even though the gods weren't as glorious as they once were, their decrees remained meaningful enough to influence the entire prime material plane. The battle between good and evil had cast a shadow in Doran's thoughts. Attack, wait a moment, look. What's that? Doran was still indulging in his flights of fancy, so Jimmy had to pin him down to a muddy hill. A large amount of disgusting dirt entered his mouth, so rotten it could make one puke for days and lose their appetite for months. However, Doran couldn't care less about that. He hadn't even gotten the time to clear the dirt from his mouth before he saw numerous shadowy figures approaching them at great speed. The other party moved at great speed, reaching them almost within seconds. It was the mounted wolves, the nightmare of the north. Orcs. It's orcs. Jimmy shouted, his face warping as he saw the orcs. Their races had long been at war, killing each other even if they met accidentally. Whoosh. The wolf rider arrived before them in a split second. Escape was not an option. Am I going to die here? Lena. Extreme shock and fear caused Doran to turn dizzy, feeling like these were his final thoughts. However, just as the poor souls got ready to sacrifice their lives for the north, the situation moved in an unexpected direction. The mounted wolves did indeed surround them, but they were not harmed. The riders instead parted, making way for a werewolf on a humongous mount. I am the Golden Ivory Warwolf, leader of the mounted wolves. I need to see your leader, right now, he said stiffly. Jimmy and Doran looked at each other as they heard this, feeling like they'd gained a fresh lease of life. High up in the sky, Orc Emperor Saladin was looking into Illustrial's eyes. The survival of the orcs has been threatened by the colonies as well. The Lord has ordered us to stand on the same side as you, facing the threat of the Magi. Saladin, your hands are stained with the blood of the North. Your people are our arch-enemies. Even if we're wiped out by the bugs we won't. A wizard beside Illustrial tried to intercept them. This is an order by the gods. Elminster expressed a different opinion, slowly taking a pipe from his mouth. My queen, the other wizard shouted eagerly, looking at Illustrial's hesitant face. He seemed to hate the orcs greatly. I'll have no more from you. Illustrial waved the wizard off, turning to Saladin. I agree. Great. Saladin nodded. I've brought the Thunder God's hammer, and I'll also send out the best of the mounted wolves and battle orcs. You'll be grateful that you made this decision today. I only hope you'll keep to your promises. Illustrial looked Saladin deep in the eye. However, we still have been enemies for a long time. I need your army to take a different route. We can meet at the swamp. You did well. Elminster sighed in gratitude after Saladin left. No, I feel like I've changed a lot, becoming more cruel, more of a realist. Illustrial's reply was indifferent. Trust me, my good daughter, this is all part and parcel of our lives. The old mage blew a ring of white smoke. So you thought I was a little girl for the past thousands of years? You're such a pedophile. Illustrial stared at Elminster, an unnoticeable redness covering her face. An agreement was made with the orc armies, and Jimmy and Doran took the chance to return safely to their team. However, Doran seemed to have his reservations about something. He tried to say something multiple times, but eventually stopped himself. He waited until everyone was asleep, moving close to Jimmy and asking him in an extremely low voice, "Hey Captain, are the orcs really here to help us?" Jimmy turned his body and replied in a blurry voice, "I think so. Nobody dares to disobey the gods in this world, except those demonic beings of other worlds, but aren't we still at war with them?" He wanted to say vendetta, but Doran didn't recall any good friends or relatives dying at orc hands. Many had instead been killed by the town guard or in robberies, so it seemed even less applicable. Understand this, Doran, politics is complicated. Alright, I'm really tired today, stop irritating me. Jimmy turned his body again. Doran just looked over the flap of the tent, an extremely complicated emotion in his gaze. Thud. Thud. The wooden wheels of the carts hit the uneven surface of the ground as they moved along, releasing dull thuds due to their heavy loads. Doran was following Jimmy aimlessly, his beloved sword hung at his waist. The dark circles were obvious under his eyes as he seemed distracted, he obviously hadn't rested well last night. The army assembled into the dragon formation, all equipped with weapons and shields. It scared any predators away, making the trip relatively safe. Doran, get back on your feet, do you want Lena to become a widow? Jimmy patted Doran's shoulder. Suddenly, the corner of his eye shifted. Careful. Doran had noticed the shadowy figure speeding through the bushes at almost the same time. A silver ray darted past him before he could act himself, shooting from Jimmy's hand into the bushes. A shriek sounded out. Awesome. Haha, Captain's the best. We've got something. Everyone gathered around, looking at Doran with green eyes as he pulled a giant rat out of the bush. There was a silver blade stuck in its skull. Such great meat. You're definitely treating us tonight. Everyone's eyes glowed as they stared at the prey in Doran's hands. Food was scarce in the Dark Ages, meat a dish only the higher classes could afford. Normal people hardly ever saw some. Of course. Jimmy looked around, agreeing without hesitation, everyone is invited to our campsite. All the travelers cheer at his generosity, immersing themselves in a pool of joy. Doran looked at them with envy. That's right, I should be more hardworking, at least I've got to bring something back. The leaders will take care of the orcs. However, his determination was crushed the very next moment. A huge ball of fire shot out of the sky, aimed at Jimmy's position. A great explosion tore Jimmy's body apart in moments, charring his incomplete corpse. Having run over to get the prey, Doran had escaped the worst of the damage. Still, despite avoiding death, a large amount of his hair was burnt even at that distance. Looking at that region swarming with victims of the disaster, his eyes glittered coldly. The fireball spell, wizard attack. Doran knew from Holdman how powerful wizards were. Realizing such powerful spellcasters were his opponents, he didn't just go up wildly to avenge his captain, instead rolling into the bushes. He'd made the right decision, as a wave of terrifying spells followed. Cloudkill. Summon monster. Ice all. Banshee's wail. Volley after volley of mid-ranked spells crashed down on the army, with dazzling light. The powerful spells reaped numerous lives. It's an attack from the sky. Doran's eyes were wide open as he tried his best to raise his head. He saw huge pairs of wings supporting dark shadows in the air, obviously flight of the dragon. The dark shadows were dressed in traditional wizard robes, but one thing was different: there was a pair of twinkling purple eyes on their dark robes, alongside a holy black emblem surrounded by a purple ring. Shadow wizards. Illustrial and Elminster responded immediately. They had few high-ranked and legendary wizards on their own end. It was a slap in the face for the Silverymoon Union, famed for its magic, to lose in that field. They got ready for the counterattack, but the shadow wizards retreated into a portal. This is just the beginning. Their leader warned before stepping into the portal. The portal disappeared immediately. Illustrial and Elminster, who were both trying to cast Dimensional Anchor, turned a ghastly pale. Human wizards, why are they attacking our army? Doran's eyes were filled with fury. He couldn't understand why they were attacking at all. Also, what the heck are the shadow wizards? He thought of this new term he'd heard today. He looked at the scattered army and the burning remains of his friend's corpse, clenching his fists tightly and swearing in his heart, no matter what, Jimmy, I will avenge you. Charge. Did you see it? Illustrial didn't care at all about the mess her soldiers were in, instead turning and staring at Elminster with the most serious face she'd ever made. Yes, Elminster took out his pipe, but he wasn't in the mood to enjoy it. black robes, purple eyes, and the purple-rimmed black badge. The goddess of shadows is back, the lady of the night, Shar. Illustrial grew fearful and troubled at the prospect of having to face the being who once competed with her mother. She's also built a new shadow weave, and although it isn't spread everywhere and can only support rank 9 spells at the most, it's still a great attraction to all the wizards below the legendary realm. Elminster knew well how rational the wizards were about their realistic mindset. They were weak in faith from the start, and that had only been amplified by Mystra's death. The loss of their powers was sad and humiliating, causing many to enter deep despair. Some ignored the teachings of the gods to commit suicide. And Shar had come to them in their darkest moments, organizing the shadow wizards into a group. If they joined, they could regain their powers. People only treasured what they had once they lost it. Learning that it would not be easy to gain their power again, those who become shadow wizards grew more devoted and passionate. Their kind could even conduct trades with demons and devils for power. Subordination to Shar didn't even need a moment's thought. Even Elminster would have been shaken by the idea of joining the Shadow Wizards if not for the fact that he was already at the peak of the legendary realm. Had he lost his powers with the destruction of the weave as well, he would have made the same choice. Of course, that was if he hadn't offended Shar by his closeness to Mystra. These spatial fluctuations, they already have legendary wizards. Elminster frowned. They came to stop us from destroying the colony. They've joined up with the Magi. As a peak legendary wizard with the blood of a goddess of magic, Illustrial had a lot of information channels in this regard, far more than the others at the same level. The shadow wizards have joined the Magi. Does that mean Shar defected? The fact weighed down on the father and daughter far more heavily than anything before it. Magi and gods defecting had never happened since the two races had first made contact. If Shar had joined the Magi, it would cause great pain to everyone in the world of gods. Those who disobey the gods will be punished by the Celestial Hall. No matter how weak his faith was, external factors forced Elminster into becoming an absolute devotee. I hope so as well. Anyway, this attack exposed our shortcomings. We need more guards, and an emergency plan. Illustrial was tired. Please invite Saladin here. We need to combine our armies immediately, or at the least keep in contact. We can't afford another attack. Illustrial had just ignored the hatred between the humans of the north and the orcs, throwing away her reputation and the trust of her men with this invitation. The appearance of the Shadow Wizards obviously had great impact on the Silvery Moon Alliance. 2 days later, the combined army of humans and orcs finally arrived at the swamplands. The purple silt here was putrid, streaks of green mist wafting in the air to form endless hallucinations. The insect colonies caused the complete destruction of their environments, turning the lands into a poisonous swamp that was a haven for the bugs. With how fast it's growing, the broodmother will wake up soon. Elminster pointed at a scene captured by a spell within a temporary tent, a look of concern on his face. Once the broodmother matures, the drones and workers will begin invading the surroundings. They will breed much more powerful bugs, or even another broodmother. All information points to one thing. If we can't stop this right now, our chances of success are nil. Illustrial and Saladin were watching from a round table, seated upright alongside human and orc officers. The subordinates were staring at each other in silence, sparks of anger in their eyes. That's certain. If we fail this time, the environment here will be wiped out. Plants, animals, water, food, orcs, humans, we'll all be killed as the bugs continue to make more and more broodmothers and start new bases. Illustrial continued slowly. If this continues, the entire prime material plane will be gone. I ask you, no, I beg you, please let go of past hatred, and focus on the fight for the future. I agree with the Queen. Saladin looked at the orc leaders. If you disobey, I'll behead all of you and shove your heads up your asses. With the great pressure of the light-killer bugs bearing down on them, as well as Saladin's authoritative power, things worked out quite well. The orc leaders acknowledged his words even faster than the humans. How much time do we have left? Saladin looked at Elminster. 20 hours, maybe less. Elminster blew out a few white rings of smoke. Then let us begin right away. The Lord is ready to descend. Numerous runes appeared on Saladin's body. He's promised to give us more power, sending an avatar to help out in the operation. Thank you, for all you've done. Illustrial stood up and bowed deeply. The army prepared itself quickly under the great pressure. Wizards, prepare. Breeze. Elminster took charge of the wizards, having them gather all the wind elemental particles around them. A gentle breeze swept past the region. With the help of a giant formation and his own legendary might, he amplified the wind as he fused all the minor spells together. The product of hundreds of years of study into the arcane, legendary fusion spell Tornado. Strong gusts of wind quickly formed a tornado, blades of air howling as it sucked in everything around it. The storm swept across the huge swamp, dispersing the green mist and sending the endless water flying into the sky. Once the tornado dissipated, Illustrial appeared in front of the swamp. Mass summon earth elementals. A ring of brown light shimmered in her hands, pulling the elemental particles and teleporting several earth elementals to the prime material plane. The elementals roared out as brown energy particles gathered into a spell. Transmutation. Dirt to stone. The assistance of the many elementals allowed a large amount of brown light to cover the swamp. Soft rotting mud began to condense, hardening into granite. It forced the bugs out of the mud, into a final battle. Loud buzzing resounded from numerous pairs of wings, a horrifying green cloud of insects approaching their position. From weak bees to powerful beetles and terrifying longhorns, the sheer size of the army caused a great commotion amongst the troops. Standing tall amongst the insects were numerous wizards, all dressed in black robes. These bastards, they came to help the colony. Illustrial flushed with anger. Even if she'd known they were working together, their actions had stepped past her line. You've done a great job, leave the rest to me. Saladin stood up, moving to the front of in the name of the Lord, please grant me power. An enormous hammer with violet lightning around it appeared in Saladin's hands, an unseen power showering down upon him that caused his body to grow in a split second. Rumble. The very next moment, the strongest of orcs had become a towering giant. This was the legendary spell, God's Descent. Boom. The earth shook with every one of the giant's steps, countless streaks of lightning crashing down from the sky as the thunder god's hammer grew to match its owner. You bloody bugs, I will slaughter you all. Saladin shouted, swinging the hammer down. Purple lightning swept across the sky, covering almost everything in the region. A streak of silver shot through the darkness, bringing light and hope as wave after wave of insects were burnt to the ground. Many of the shadow wizards were wiped out by a single barrage. Attack. The mounted wolves roared, charging into the deepest regions of the swamp as they followed the new path. Charge. The humans were red-eyed with fury as well, fighting for their lives. Counterattack. This was a battlefield of blood and fire, being fought with a dense sea of bugs. Doran sliced another approaching bug with his longsword, splitting it apart into two. The originally sharp blade was now covered with the disgusting fluids of the various bugs, its edges chipped and jagged from use. Any normal day this would have caused him great heartache, but at this point he didn't even have the time to examine his sword properly. The army was like a lone boat in this sea of bugs, being rocked by wave after wave of death. Death lingered around them without end, and all Doran could do was to wave the sword in his hands around numbly, killing one monstrous bug after the last. His comrades kept falling all around him, humans and orcs alike, but he no longer had the energy to care. He pushed forward without rest, stepping over the corpses of his comrades in pursuit of their common goal. He had to destroy this nest of evil. In this war for survival, there was no way for them to withdraw and escape. The orcs and humans formed the most cold-blooded of armies, killing all deserters without hesitation even if they were related. Ha! Am I going to die here? Doran was breathing roughly, his powerless body feeling like lead. However, just at the moment all of his stamina was about to be exhausted, as he was about to be drowned out by the sea of bugs, things suddenly grew bright once more. A golden light cleaved through the sea, allowing him to see the purple nest at the heart of the marshland. Hymns began to sound in the surroundings. Under the rays of the gods, all courageous soldiers shall be fearless. Doran immediately brightened up. He managed to find the wizard who'd killed Jimmy, grievously injured and fleeing into the distance. A surge of strength came out of nowhere as the power of vengeance gave him the strength to stand once more. He stared hard at the wizard, evidently injured from a previous encounter. The man's black robes were now in tatters, traces of lightning burns left behind on his body. He didn't even have the strength to open a portal anymore, only able to crawl to the depths of the swamp. Doran followed closely. The wizard obviously wanted to escape, and his path was already offset from the nest of the bugs. Stand right there, you darn bastard. Doran threw the sword in his hands. The meticulously crafted blade formed a beautiful arc in the air as it pierced into the man's thigh. Arg! The fleeing wizard swayed, falling down into the smelly marshes. Got you. Doran excitedly darted forward, finding the wizard lying in the dirt. He was bleeding profusely from the wound on his thigh, seemingly having fainted. For Jimmy. Doran fumbled around the area, looking for the sword he'd thrown. He wanted to reveal the identity of this wizard. However, the fainted wizard suddenly revealed a scroll in his hands. Acid splash. Doran instinctively turned away to avoid death, but this burnt the entirety of his right shoulder, turning it into a mix of corroded flesh and blood. Shit. The great pain caused him to punch the wizard's face without hesitation. The black veil fell down, revealing the man's identity. The haggard face of an old man showed itself, looking extremely pale from the blood loss. His eyes seemed to be dead. For some reason, even though he'd killed many times since the start of the Dark Ages, Doran felt a fire burning in his heart. Why? He shouted as he grabbed the wizard by the collar, why are you helping the bugs against humanity? Cough cough. Wizards were naturally weaker than fighters. This one was even injured gravely, unable to cast any spells as he was still coughing up blood. Even a child could kill him easily right now. The wizard looked slightly confused for a while, but after hearing Doran's questions he suddenly began to laugh. His pale face twisted with a smile, the blood causing Doran's stomach to churn. What are you laughing at? Doran was full of ire. Do you know how many people you killed? Jimmy, and all my other foster brothers. They have people back at home waiting for their return, why? Why are you going against your own kind? My own kind. Kiki, the old wizard's smile widened, are you my kind? While I was still a high-ranked wizard, a whole bunch of people respected me, sang praises of me, and longed to meet me. However, after the collapse of the weave, those ruffians, what did those ruffians whose souls should go to hell after death do? They took everything from me in front of my face, killing little Benji, and, a hint of sorrow flashed on the wizard's face, I no longer treated them as humans. When the shadow wizards found me, I joined immediately for the sake of my vengeance. I'd be willing to sell my soul to the devils for my revenge. Hee hee, now I've had those bastards enjoy the most painful and regretful deaths they ever could have. My purpose is done, kill me. The old wizard closed his eyes, and Doran froze in place. The wizard's face morphed into that of Holdman in his vision, bringing back memories of his manor and his family that stayed outside town. The condemnation of the wizard caused him to remember his own actions, that night amidst the flames appearing once more before his eyes as if he was experiencing it all again. Oh, the veins on the back of Doran's hands popped up, and his face began to twitch as if he was trying to weigh his options. Perhaps, we're all at fault. Blame this wretched world. Doran recalled Lena, who was still waiting for his return. He gritted his teeth and picked up his sword. Come, chop off my head and make this your achievement. The wizard snickered and closed his eyes. Ha! The sword dropped down on the wizard's head with all the strength Doran could muster, however, it felt like he'd pierced into cotton, not flesh. Doran opened his eyes in shock, finding the sword in his hand stuck in midair as a great pressure enveloped him. Sorry, little guy, while I'm sympathetic of your plight, the camp does give out rewards based on merits, a pleasant voice sounded, and Doran's vision went black. The gods are already recovering. Leylin's clone watched the collapse of a huge hive in the distance, a strange smile on his face. As for you, loser, I'm benevolent, I'll give you another chance. A dark red luster wrapped around the old wizard's body, causing him to cry out pitifully as a strange transformation occurred to him. Kukulkan, my lord, you are the mighty lord of original sin, the sole source of sin in the universe. You are the master of everything. What had once been the old wizard knelt before Leylin, his grievous injuries long gone. Go somewhere else. Leylin waved his arms, and a dark red teleportation gate opened up to take the bowing monster away. This test failed. Leylin shook his head, gazing into the distance. A few orc avatars were lying there in wait. So, Groomsh, are you regretting the fact that you only sent one avatar here? Leylin smiled as he gazed at the head of the orc pantheon. Even encircled by many gods he didn't look flustered. The gods have recovered rather quickly, and set up eternal sources of light in their divine kingdoms. They can send divine spells to their priests in the prime material plane already. Leylin knew full well that without the help of the gods the Silvery Moon Alliance and the Orc Empire couldn't destroy a nest. Nightmare serpent, sinner that devoured the sun, the gods condemned him in such seething fury that they could burn even the void itself as they descended to fight him. The battle's only begun. Unfortunately, the avatar dissipated before Leylin's punishment arrived for him, leaving behind several enraged roars. Badr, how is it? Leylin was standing in front of Mother Core, watching the events in multiple locations in the prime material plane. The few survivors in the mortal world had obtained great support, beginning to send troops to destroy the nearby hives. Priests were playing an extremely important role in this process. The counterattack of the gods is beginning, Mother Core said with a sigh. That's normal, but the timing, Leylin stroked his chin, it's at just the right moment when we're planning for the support of the Magus World's worldwall, unable to make any clones, what are you trying to say? Mother Core focused on the Lord of Original Sin in front of her. There's a traitor in our midst. Leylin turned solemn. Since Shar could become a Magus, why couldn't a Magus side with the gods? The power of sin in the world of gods is telling me something. If we don't treat it seriously, the consequences will be dire. Leylin looked at Mother Core in front of him, speaking sincerely, I hope to call a joint conference of the Magi immediately. Encirclement numerous powerful conscients gathered within a secret space, their powerful auras forming huge black silhouettes. There were a few new figures amongst them, containing unfathomable power. Rumble. Space split apart at that moment, and the powers of the world and original sin entered the space. Everyone. Leylin fashioned a form out of original sin, looking at the silhouettes around him. Every person here was a peak rank 8 existence. The gods have stabilized their divine kingdoms, interfering with our actions in the prime material plane. Even as the world combination project was underway, someone divulged our current situation. Kiki. So you're saying there's a traitor amongst us? Another voice Leylin was familiar with sounded, carrying obvious hostility. Of course, distorted shadow. Furthermore, it could even be you. Leylin stared fearlessly at the peak rank 8 Magus, exchanging thoughts rapidly. I can swear upon my true soul that I never revealed any information about the plan. Distorted shadow looked coldly at Leylin. Instead, Lord of Original Sin, why did you not devour the entire prime material plane and destroy the gods in one fell swoop? You seem quite suspicious. The sun is one thing, but the prime material plane is a whole other matter. It's the foundation of the world of gods, the base of all existence. Destroying it would be like destroying the world of gods itself, not something a peak rank 8 can do. Mother Core stood up for her ally. I feel like the gods have begun their counterattack, and they definitely won't miss the opportunity. Please wait and see, everyone. Leylin glared coldly at Distorted Shadow, his indifference causing the other party to feel apprehensive. All we can do right now is to speed up the two-world plan. An existence surrounded by darkness spoke up, every word seemingly coming from a deep abyss. This was the Darkness Lord, a peak rank 8 existence from the dark world. Our true bodies are currently outside the crystal sphere, and we can't easily dispatch them, another figure spoke, radiating the green light of life. This was the ancient tree of life, a huge tree from the life world that had harnessed the power of magic. However, even as the numerous peak rank 8s were discussing the issue, a rumble sounded from the depths of the abyss, as if to verify Leylin's words. A sort of sacred natural radiance sealed off the entire abyss, numerous golden silhouettes walking out to the hymns of their followers. The gods. They're taking action with their true bodies. Mother Core waved her hands, displaying a huge image that allowed those present to see the gods line up. Tyr, Tempest, Talos, Ogma, and Grunge, all of them are powerful gods. The Chaos Lord and Evil Filthy Eye are in danger. Leylin looked around his surroundings, unable to find the conscience of those two existences. As chaotic existences themselves, they grew intoxicated with the pleasure of plundering the abyss and lost all interest in the outside world. They didn't realize the crisis they were in. Kiki, it's rare for such strong existences to be willing to step out of their divine kingdoms, the Darkness Lord sneered. If we push the two-world plan back and move out together, at least half of them will fall. Peak rank 8 Magi were equivalent to greater gods within the world of gods. The difference was that their powers belonged to them alone, so in a fight outside of the divine kingdoms the Magi would definitely win. One had to agree that Darkness Lord's suggestion was enticing, causing a few Magi to stir. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Leylin stood out at that moment, speaking coldly. Substantiate. Why? It's not easy to find a chance to eliminate so many powerful gods in one fell swoop. As expected, Distorted Shadow jumped out immediately, speaking with ulterior motives. Haven't you all realized that the most powerful existences within God's world have yet to appear? Leylin glanced at Distorted Shadow, his voice was full of disdain. There were differences even amongst powerful gods. Ogma, for example, couldn't match Tempest, the god of fighting in combat. Past rank 18, there were a few gods who were known for their combat. The four elemental gods were an example. Akkadi, Grumbar, xianxia and Kossith were all ancient gods, staying within their elemental planes of wind, earth, water, and fire respectively. They stood aloof from worldly affairs, holding secrets even most gods didn't know in their arsenal. There were also gods like Uptau, Sylvanus, Jurgal, and Shantea. They were formidable beings, powerful enough to be the monarchs of their own worlds, second only to the overgod himself. That these powerful gods had yet to appear in the abyss caused Leylin to grow vigilant. Oh, you're here in your true bodies. Were you ordered to abandon your mouse holes and come to the abyss? Azure power had converged above what was once the Argent Palace in Azagrat, forming a many-eyed giant with a blurred face. Since you're here anyway, you shall become the foundation of my abyssal power. The Chaos Lord didn't seem to be worried at all when facing numerous existences of the same rank. A majority of the eyes seemed to be filled with reckless insanity. The Chaos Lord didn't seem to even care as chaotic origin force sprang forth from the depths of the abyss, mixing with dark energy as it spread around its giant leg. I've restricted its actions. I'll leave the rest to you. A golden radiance was spreading from Ogma's body, shrouding the entirety of Azagrat. Tyr and Tempest brought out their favorite divine weapons, rushing forth towards the chaos. Lord, a terrifying storm swept through the endless maze, the constant rain forming a huge turbulent sea. Tisk, why do I have to be paired with you? The powerful god of storms looked at the golden orc standing beside him, his face full of disdain. I should be the one saying that. Grumsh gave Talos a look. A palace suddenly surfaced within the maze, endless power forming a gigantic evil eye that released a skin-crawling roar. Zzzzgrrgrrgrrr. The ancient evil filthy eye, a magus who once killed a greater god, Grumsh's eyes lit up as a bright red flag was drawn from his back. Only the orcs are the strongest fighters. He roared, his body expanding in a moment as it clashed with the solid yellow eye. The aftershocks of the battle caused the entire abyss to tremble. The demons were intimidated by the formidable power, running about aimlessly as numerous archfiends ruthlessly cursed the gods. They hid within their castles, not daring to come out. The silhouettes of two powerful archfiends emerged at the edge of the abyss, one of them the two-brained Demogorgon and the other the king of the undead, Orcus. Alongside Grazist, these were the three abyssal lords, the strongest of demons. The gods took action according to plan, but it doesn't seem to be attracting the other magi. Orcus frowned. If not for them meddling with the origin force of the abyss and helping the gods, they wouldn't at all have been able to infiltrate into the abyss so quickly, sealing the Chaos Lord and the evil filthy eye where they were. The Demogorgon's two heads glanced at each other, surprisingly not arguing. That's fine as well. The gods want to use the abyss as the main battlefield, but the magi weren't baited. After the chaos is settled, the abyss will still be ours. It's rare for both your heads to reach an agreement. What else should I say? Orcus, undead body laughed, the power of death mixing with an aura of chaos to fragment the surrounding space. Haha, that's right, the abyss shall belong to us demons, only we can stay here. No one can take it away, not magi and not gods. The Demogorgon parroted, let's kill those gods afterwards, one of the heads said suddenly. No, we shall dominate the abyss first, the other retorted, causing Orcus to suddenly shake his head. The unity of these heads seemed to be temporary. The chaos of the Demogorgon would be revealed once more as the threat passed. However, this is indeed a good opportunity. A strange light flashed past Orcus' eyes. The demons had always coveted the prime material plane and the gods. The second dusk would prove to be a great opportunity to attack. As for their contract with the gods, since when did chaotic evil have the concept of contracts? With their demonic natures, even the Styx could not hold them to their vows and stop the deaths of their enemies. Probe currently, within the conference of the Magi. I'm afraid the Chaos Lord and evil filthy eye won't be able to hold up, we need to send reinforcements. Distorted Shadow shouted frantically, but then he felt awkward when nobody stood with him. After all, Leylin's words had made sense. It was impossible for Magi to take the risk to sacrifice themselves for others. If there's still some doubt in your hearts, maybe I can prove my point. The power of original sin shot forth from Leylin's body, carrying traces of blood with black spots. This power that carried all the sins of the mortal world attracted numerous gazes, even if everyone here was a peak rank 8, some were shocked by Leylin's aura. The path of original sin, this power, the ancient tree of life seemed to recall something. The blood dripped down in the void, forming into the 7 sins as it seemed to acquire a life of its own. The dense fog shrunk to form a Few tall figures. Leylin, the Darkness Lord, Mother Core, even distorted Shadow, they were all imitated to perfection, including the energy waves of their true souls. Such was the mercurial power of original sin. Even the faint auras being leaked by these rank 8 existences could be analyzed and imitated. Identical auras. Numerous rank 8s were surprised by the skill Leylin displayed, Mother Core most of all. He's grown stronger again. Even if it's only an avatar, one can see the changes in his true body as well. It's like he never met a bottleneck after reaching peak rank 8, she sent her tendrils out to gather information, finally getting to the crux of the matter. This is the influence of the Dark Ages. The negative emotions generated in the end times are the best nourishment for the Nightmare Hydra. Indeed, that was why Leylin engulfed the sun, bringing about the Dark Ages instead of attacking the gods. The Dark Ages benefited him greatly, giving 1,000-fold the power of sin he would have acquired during times of peace. Massacre, death, greed, envy, all the deadly sins had come into play in the end times. They occurred often, and were intense when they did. Without anyone knowing the better, Leylin had actually seized the powers of everyone struggling in the prime material plane to increase his own power. It was like he had an entire world's worth of zealots worshipping him, providing him with unending power. How could his strength not advance by leaps and bounds? The avatars that were more real than the originals crossed the boundaries of space-time, containing violent energy. Kill the overgod. Our glory cannot be tarnished. Reinforce the Lord of Chaos and Evil Filthy Eye. Powerful conscience pierced through the sky, led by an avatar of original sin with the power of a peak rank 8 magus. They descended upon the abyss like several gigantic meteorites. Such vile power, as expected of the god of massacre, more chaotic than the demons and more vile than the devils, both the Demogorgon and Orcus quivered at the edge of the abyss. The Magi are here. Inform the gods. Ellipsis. The truth shall verify everything. Several existences were looking at the image displayed by Mother Core. The fake avatars had just arrived outside the abyss, about to enter its depths. A terrifying change occurred at that moment, green light brimming with the aura of life suddenly forming a cage of green vines that trapped the party. The flora of the world roared out, as if a primordial beast had just woken up. The god of the wild, Sylvanus, to think he's still alive, Mother Core's face instantly became unsightly. Sylvanus was second only to the overgod, the number of magi that had died at his hands not few. I didn't expect this, even if his divine body had been crushed, he didn't fall completely, the Darkness Lord sighed as well, looking at Leylin with a gaze of encouragement and gratification. Sylvanus' appearance had proved him right. Wait for it. Leylin actually grew even more solemn, perhaps even a little eager. Rumble. Boom. The 4 elemental planes roared out, rippling with terrifying power as an endless stream of elemental power congealed to form a powerful seal. Earth, fire, wind, water. The elemental gods had shown themselves, their combined might causing the Darkness Lord to lose his voice. The 4 elements formed a vast storm of origin force, instantly exterminating the avatars inside the cage. Not even a speck of dust was overlooked. No, these aren't true bodies, they're just avatars, the goddess of air, Akadi, frowned. They could even conceal their spiritual fluctuations from us, these magi are even more difficult to deal with than the ancient ones, that doesn't matter. It is our duty to safeguard the peace and security of the entire world, Kosseth the Lord of Fire said. At least we can be sure that they're not as strong as in the last war. This is good news, a gigantic flower bloomed as the will of nature descended upon them. Having lost his true body in the final war, Sylvanus had merged his will with the nature of the world, growing even stronger in the process. As long as we exist, we will not allow the Magi to advance even half a step. The power of nature guided the 4 elements, forming a solid seal in front of the abyss that prevented the 2 Magi within from escaping. The elemental planes roared, pouring origin force into the seal continuously, their might causing the hearts of the Magi watching to palpitate. Goddess of air Akadi, god of earth Grumbar, god of water Istacia, god of fire Kosseth, alongside the god of the wild Sylvanus, to think these ancient existences were actually still alive, a peak rank 8 magus released a cry of surprise, GG, very well, very well. We can settle the vengeance of previous war together now, a few avatars from the corner sneered. They were all like distorted shadow, mere remnant wills sealed up by the gods. Although Leylin had set them free, their powers had dropped and they were currently recovering. These are 5 pinnacle existences even amongst the greater gods. Unless we mobilize everyone, we won't be able to break through the elemental planes, Mother Core said. On top of that, the two-world plan's defenses will drop if we leave. It isn't just that, Leylin said without hurry. No magus would underestimate him now, thinking of him as a new entry to their ranks. It wasn't easy to confuse greater gods with an avatar, and being unable to see through his powers themselves, couldn't he casually mount a sneak attack upon any of them? All guarantees were fake, might being the only truth. I noticed another existence as well. Leylin waved his hands, and the dark power of original sin built a murky image. A golden light was lurking within the darkness of the abyss, something Mother Core's probes hadn't managed to discover. Seeing the genuine appearance of the god, Mother Core immediately stirred up. That's the Earth Mother, she's mine. Leylin frowned for a moment, but quickly relaxed. Right. Mother Core has reached the limits of her path, unable to advance and comprehend the powers of spacetime. Xianxia walks the same path as well, so if she can devour the goddess to make up for her foundation, she really will have a chance of advancing to rank 9. What was more enticing to a peak rank 8 existence than advancing to rank 9? Leylin could understand Mother Core's excitement, her future had just appeared in front of her. Sylvanas is mine, the ancient tree of life followed. Its path of life perfectly fit into Sylvanas, domain of nature. Haha. Very well, this is the boldness we should have. Even a greater god is restricted by their faith, only fit to become my prey. Looking at this atmosphere, the Darkness Lord began laughing in excitement. Moving two streaks of lightning crashed down in the abyss, flashing with resentment and unwillingness. The world rumbled as a few powerful gods escaped the place, cutting a sorry figure as they assembled before Sylvanas. Chaos Lord, deserving of the name, Tyr looked at a laceration on his chest, filled with chaos energy as it spread throughout his body. The other gods weren't much better, Grumsh the most worse off. More than half his body had been corroded, revealing dark brown skin. Golden blood and internal organs were sticking out of his body. It wasn't an easy task to kill two peak rank 8 magi, and even these 5 formidable gods had to pay the price. I've consumed a lot of divine force. I'll need to enter slumber for a while, and looking at the state of my worshippers, it will take longer than normal. Ogma frowned. You've worked hard. A layer of green light enveloped the greater gods' bodies. Their divine force was suddenly replenished, their expressions recovering as the injuries on their bodies healed. I've gathered enough faith over the millennia to replenish your powers. Sylvanas was brimming with gentle kindness. He'd always been nice to everyone he met, the sole exception being the Magi. Those Magi can watch on as two of their own fall. They really are sinister and crafty, the other gods said in indignation, trying to come up with some sort of conspiracy. Sylvanas waved, and the elemental power of the 4 planes instantly isolated their location. Even Mother Core couldn't peer in on further conversation. Mother Core spoke up without hurry after the image was cut off. I cannot sense the two in the spacetime river, they've fallen completely, their true souls destroyed. Without the intervention of a rank 9 it will be impossible for them to revive. Magi gained the ability to revive from a single drop of blood at rank 6, and Magi of laws were like cockroaches that would revive swiftly as long as a trace of their will remained. However, greater gods were at the same level of power. Leylin could stop the gods from resurrecting, and so, too, could the gods stop Magi. No small number of Magi of laws had fallen in the final war. Thinking of that point, even Leylin felt his heart go cold. The ability to stop a magus true soul from entering the river of spacetime, even Celeborn should be unable to perform such feats. Leylin's face grew imposing. There's only one possibility. Jurgul has appeared once more. Is the final war already at that stage? Jurgul was an ancient god of death, the oldest god alive. Legend spoke of his weariness of his job that led him to create Celeborn to assume his position, letting him enter seclusion somewhere in the ghost world. Even the ancient dusk of the gods hadn't aroused Jurgul. Any existences harboring ill will towards him could only die miserably, and as time passed his name had become a taboo secret. However, this renowned god had exited seclusion right now, participating in the final war at such an early stage. The turn of events surprised Leylin. It wasn't hard for numerous greater gods to kill 2 peak rank 8 magi. However, it was far more difficult to wipe their souls from the spacetime river, something only the ancient god of death was proficient in. Leylin felt like the coming battle would be intense, determining victory or death. However, these were all results he had to achieve. All obstructions on his path to truth and eternity would be crushed without hesitation, regardless of identity or power. A dull glow shone out of Leylin's eyes. Starting with the fight in the abyss, the gods completed adjusting their divine kingdoms quickly, beginning their counterattack against the Magi. All gods, regardless of rank and power, turned out in full strength to purge the Magi from their world. Although Magi of laws were stronger on average, the gods had the home field advantage. They didn't hold back on their divine force at all, using everything in their arsenals to take the Magi out. With the foundation of their divine kingdoms, they were not required to worry about the problem of their backyard catching fire. With numerous peak rank 8s stuck working on the two-world project, the gods were pressing forward step by step, eliminating several Magi in succession. The flames of war spread across the astral plane, extinguishing millions of lives. Information from ancient times was spread despite the unreasonable ancient races, speaking of the Magi, the dusk of the gods, and the road to eternity. It deeply stunned the entire world. The actions of the gods were quick and violent, like predators stalking their prey as they aimed at the weakest points to launch fatal strikes. With several powerful gods overseeing them, the gods took control of the prime material plane once more. Numerous priests were dispatched to aid the remaining survivors, bringing food and superior weapons. The world will adapted the prime material plane to a life without the sun, making new edible plants that were similar to oats and rice. Alongside the mushrooms and seeds brought up from the Underdark, the humans were finally satisfied. Hive after hive of the light-killer bugs was destroyed, ceasing their suppression of humanity. Survivors started to build tall walled cities once more, establishing new towns as well as civilization was rebuilt. Everything seemed to be heading for a better future. Sadly, in the eyes of certain existences like the Magi, these actions were pitiful death throes. Numerous peak rank 8 Magi had assembled outside the world of gods, within the boundless astral plane. Leylin was standing at their core. The major preparations are finally complete. The rest will be in your hands, Lord Leylin. The true soul of the Darkness Lord was a lump of black smoke with fiery red flames for eyes, flickering with the cycle of life as it moved. That's not a problem. Leylin looked behind him. The silhouette of an extremely massive world was sitting there, a short distance away. It possessed the glory of the Magi, releasing energy waves that Leylin was familiar with. The Magi had actually brought the Magus world here from across the astral plane. A massive world had been moved into the path of another equally large one. This had never happened in the history of the astral plane. This was the arduous project that the majority of peak rank 8 Magi had dedicated themselves to, combining their true souls for a long time to complete. BZZT. A unique attractive forces was generated as the two worlds drew close. Numerous laws distorted as they fused, spreading endlessly to form a network that encompassed the whole area. The mutual attraction of the world origin forces, Leylin sighed in admiration. When the world of gods and Magus world fuse completely, the hidden path of eternity will show itself, a prophecy from ancient times verified by several Magi. Right, now is the time for everything to end. A faint light shone within Mother Kor's eyes as she arrived beside Leylin, looking at the disc in his hands. The combined efforts of many Magi had finally repaired the Manderhawk plate, revealing several strange and disorderly patterns that formed one harmonious entity with a mysterious glow. It started. The Manderhawk plate in Leylin's hands floated up, emitting a warm radiance at the boundary of the world of gods and the Magus world. The end. Eternity. Numerous peak rank 8 Magi roared, the power of laws gathering to the extreme to form turbulent rivers that represented their paths. All of it poured into the Manderhawk plate. With the support of such great amounts of energy, the Manderhawk plate grew larger and larger. White light melted a huge portion of the crystal sphere, revealing the world of gods within. This wasn't like the small-scaled attack Leylin used to enter before. It was a direct, violent confrontation, aimed to destroy the crystal sphere entirely. A terrifying sound spread across several worlds, causing the gods of the world of gods to lose their heads in fear. The crystal sphere. It's been shattered. They felt an impending sense of doom. It was impossible to measure the amount of damage they would take when the crystal sphere collapsed. A tale of two worlds in the underworld, within the palace of a certain god of death. The person on the throne had the most ordinary of human faces, just that his eyes were full of vigor as they radiated wisdom. The true identity of this god would definitely astonish everyone. This was the ancient god of death, Jurgal. Even the Kelemvor had to greet him with respect, calling himself Jurgal's student. The appearance of the nightmare serpent has declared the beginning of the end. Jurgal sighed slowly, a trace of light seeming to appear within his pitch-black eyes. And it is when the end arrives that the light of eternity appears. Rumble. The crystal sphere shattered like a honeycomb, smashing apart as numerous magi of laws rushed forth. The two worlds trembled and roared, and in the midst of the chaos Sylvanus led several strong existences to the border where both worlds met. Vile magi, you will inevitably be punished by the gods, burning in raging flames for thousands, millions of years. The four elemental gods roared, causing the elemental planes to reveal themselves as they released their powers in a torrent of energy that blocked the Magus invasion. The final war cannot be avoided. Numerous peak rank 8 magi took action under Leylin's lead. Original sin, darkness, earth, life, all sorts of powerful paths combined in the astral plane, becoming a powerful force that pushed the fusion of the two worlds. A massive fluctuation instantly spread throughout the world of gods, overwhelming everything with terrifying earthquakes. The intense collision caused earth-shattering changes to every plane. Many life forms ran around lifelessly, seeing the beginning of the end. The laws of the Magus world forcefully invaded the world of gods, mixing with it in an intriguing change. The two biggest worlds of the astral plane complemented each other, agreeing to the fusion as they showed the path to eternity. World of gods, sea of origin force. The world crystal protecting the overgod in the celestial hall shattered, causing an astonishingly strong existence to awaken with a terrifying roar. It's the overgod. Their world will awaken. The expressions of the numerous peak rank 8 magi tightened. Bang! Almost instantly they saw a blurry figure wrapped in brilliant light appear before them, someone that represented everything in the world of gods. Overgod, the remaining gods saluted, please exercise your authority, and prevent the arrival of the end. The Overgod did indeed wish to merge with the Magus world to advance, however, that didn't mean it was willing to be devoured by the Magus world. There was a big difference in who had the dominant position, so despite being injured the Overgod chose to act without hesitation. Leylin was a peak rank 8 Magus, only one step away from the ultimate realm of rank 9. Still, only after seeing the Overgod in person did he realize that all his supposed overestimations of rank 9 power were nothing. The power of space and time wasn't something he could comprehend. A rank 9 used the power of their path to build a foundation with which they comprehended the laws of space and time, a realm the Overgod had clearly reached. Teleportation was sealed at the border of the two worlds, but the Overgod had appeared here instantly anyway. This clearly meant his comprehension of the laws of space and time were terrifying. A true rank 9 having revealed their hand, Leylin felt like all his speculations were just ridiculous. The sea of origin force of the world of gods rumbled with power, descending as it carried the power of the celestial hall. Space froze entirely, something even peak rank 8 magi couldn't accurately describe. Even many peak rank 8 magi couldn't escape, and only those with the power of their own path could still maintain a stream of thought. Is this the strength of a rank 9? Existences below the peak of rank 8 don't even have the ability to think in his presence. Leylin paid absolute attention to the Overgod, the AI. Chip's light flickering frantically. Beep. Observed laws of space, attempting simulation, the AI. Chip recorded everything at lightspeed, trying to analyze the power of space from a rank 9 existence to build a path for Leylin to follow in the future. However, the terror of the Overgod was only just showing itself. The invasion of the Magus world was put at a standstill with the stagnation of space, actually sealing off the Magus world itself. Soon after, something even more terrifying happened. What's going on? Leylin was stunned to see the invasion of the Magus world recede, the fused laws separating in what looked like a strange silent film in reverse. Just now, why did my train of thought derail when the Overgod appeared? Unless, Leylin focused on the AI. Chip, attempting to analyze law of space, encountered unknown interference, analysis failed, a portion of the power of space has been observed. Analyze. The unfamiliar information surfacing from the chip caused Leylin to feel cold sweat dripping from his forehead. Time reversal. Even an existence at my level was affected, my memories from a few moments ago erased. An intense chill suddenly rose within Leylin's heart. This type of law, it can cause a peak rank 8 Magus to regress to their weakest state, before they even condense their own path, it can seal strength at the peak of rank 8. The terrifying laws of space and time were like the sword of Damocles, hanging over them constantly. Peak rank 8s are proud of how they fused their true souls with the river of space and time, giving themselves unlimited life. However, the law of time can bring them back to their most vulnerable moment. Leylin now began to understand why the Overgod and the Magus will could lead numerous peak rank 8s without issue. Although wielding the power of spacetime wasn't exactly the same as holding the life and death of other magi in their hands, it was essentially no different. The others didn't feel the time being reversed, they don't even remember. Leylin sighed in secret. Even at the peak of original sin he could only vaguely sense this, and he needed the AI chip to prove it. I can't deal with rank 9s right now, let the other one handle it, Leylin sneered in secret, sending out a signal. The earth of the Magus world cracked open, revealing the 7 levels of the subterranean world. The Magus will in the darkest depths seemed to be provoked by the Overgod, awakening swiftly. Its power of spacetime finally freed the numerous peak rank 8s, allowing them to recover some of their mobility. Leylin, come here quickly. The Overgod's powers exceed our imagination. Mother Core screamed, hurry, activate the 2-world plan. Whoosh. Leylin, Mother Core, Ignox and numerous magi native to the Magus world gathered together. In my essence as a Magus, I call upon the will of magic. The entire Magus world rumbled, astonishing power shooting forth from its depths as the purple web around it was severed. Whoosh. The 2 beings with the power of spacetime instantly broke through the spatial seal, descending at the point of contact. Magus. God. With the 2 most formidable world wills having come into contact, even without any words of instigation they would be unable to coexist. Dazzling white light erupted, as the fabric of spacetime trembled. The 2 world wills rammed into each other, the ripples from their combat able to instantly annihilate anyone below the peak of rank 8. Not good. Get out of here immediately. Be it the magi or the gods, everyone was a peasant in the face of this fight. They could only escape in panic when faced with this natural disaster. The light grew brighter and brighter, able to blind even beings of laws. An explosion occurred when it could brighten no more, a raging torrent of energy sweeping across the borders of the 2 worlds to annihilate everything. However, that mysterious radiance seemed to be doing something else as well, nurturing some sort of existence. Battlefield. The 2 rank 9s were terrifyingly fast. They distanced themselves instantly during the explosion, patiently waiting for everything to end. What is this? Leylin looked at the confluence of the 2 worlds, surprise flashing in his eyes. The merged area was devoured under his gaze, reaching a total standstill as the world of gods and Magus world seemed to reach a perfect balance. They now looked like a dumbbell, the 2 worlds joined by this point of confluence. He instantly moved to this new land. Everything here had originally been void, but a black continent had been formed after the blast. The laws of space and time have crystallized. Scanning across the large continent, Leylin found that all kinds of laws had grown stable here, the earth more solid than magic alloy while the space was extremely stable. Even breaking dawns would find it difficult to fly here, forget breaking through space. Leylin used the law of original sin to scan the entire continent, finding out its specific area. It was 1/10 the size of the prime material plane, without the slightest hints of life in the rocky desert. Where did the Overgod and Magus will go? Leylin asked Mother Core who was beside him. This place is at the center of the confluence between the 2 worlds, having a strange balance. Mother Core truly was an existence that had survived the final war. Her insight and abundant experience allowed her to make sense of the situation. Although the Overgod suffered serious injuries with the destruction of the weave, the fight between rank 9s exceeds the limit of my comprehension. Even if the Overgod is slightly weaker than the Magus will, I'm afraid they won't be able to determine a winner in a short period of time. They should currently be entangled in a dimension we cannot detect, leaving the task of the final war to the beings of law. You mean? Leylin looked at the huge continent below them. Although it wasn't suitable for life, it did indeed serve well as a battlefield for beings of law. That's right, with the 2 worlds merging together, the devouring has reached a deadlock. The rest depends on the power of the beings of law. Mother Core pointed towards the mainland. This is the final battlefield, a land of nirvana where the losers lose everything. If we can achieve a pivotal victory here, the Magus will be able to directly devour the Overgod. However, the opposite is true as well. In other words, Leylin muttered, the power of the world wills are determined by their inhabitants. The victor of this battle here will determine final victory between the 2 beings of law, correct? With the 2-world plan and our advantage of advancing first, we have a great advantage right now, don't squander it. I'm afraid beings of law aren't enough. We also need large amounts of cannon fodder, Leylin mused. We need a regiment of breaking dawns led by an existence of laws to take out the lesser and intermediate gods. Our reserves consist of all the magi across the astral plane. We far exceed the opponent in numbers. We'll gather our troops, mobilizing them for war immediately, numerous beings of law promised. Leylin, on the other hand, was staring at the huge black continent. This would be the final battlefield, the land of the end. One could imagine how it would become a terrifying land of death in the near future. On the other end of the battlefield, space trembled as numerous divine kingdoms descended. They formed a strange beehive-like structure, a sort of tight fortress. Numerous prayers sounded out as holy spirits prepared to defend the mainland. The gods had completely disregarded all notions of good and evil, fighting side by side. Armies of elementals entered the battlefield, accompanied by demon lords led by the two abyssal lords. Massive demonic armies rushed forth. The divine kingdoms have descended, and all the races allied together. It seems like the gods are staking everything on this too. Leylin sneered at the opponent's formation. The final battle is nigh. The scale of this war has already exceeded the peak of our past, Mother Core added. It seems so. We should begin with our arrangements too. Numerous rules Magus roared. The power of laws fused with each other here, allowing them to unleash their full strength without the World War armor. The same held true for the gods. However, such fairness wasn't actually fair. Our determination to forge forward, everything we've struggled to obtain from the astral plane shall be displayed here today. The glory of the Magi will shroud everything. The Magi roared out loud, opening the channels to world after world. The dark world, purgatory, icy world, a steady stream of troops marched out of every one, their faces flooded with bloodthirst and determination. The weakest was at the Morning Star realm, equivalent to legendaries in the world of gods. And that was the cannon fodder. For the sake of the truth, to advance their true souls, these Magi set off without hesitation. Terrifying war drums echoed throughout the astral plane. A large ghastly castle revealed itself in Leylin's assigned area, as if a living snake that released bloodthirsty roars. Father. Two young warlocks appeared within the huge hall, and Leylin looked at them with a gentle smile on his face. I only plan to use my accumulations in Dreamscape and my avatar's divine kingdom in this final war. I didn't think you'd insist on coming. The Ouroboros clan was too weak to help. Standing in front of Leylin were his two oldest sons, Sire and Daniel. Both of them had inherited his bloodline, benefiting from the power of the Nightmare Hydra. They were close to the realm of laws, just like him when he was at the peak of rank 6. The early stages of advancement for a warlock depended almost solely on the strength of their bloodline. In this regard, what could exceed the bloodline of the Nightmare Hydra? Are you aware of how dangerous the final war is? Even breaking dawns are still cannon fodder here. What do your mothers have to say about this? Leylin looked at his two oldest sons. They were already 1,000 years old, having become ancestral figures of the Ouroboros clan with children and grandchildren of their own. The records of the ancient war in the library described it well enough. Sire and Daniel looked at each other for a bit, before Daniel stood up and spoke. We told mother and aunt before we left. You, Leylin sighed. He could see a shadow of his past self in the eyes of his children, holding an insatiable thirst for the truth. Furthermore, it was difficult for a Breaking Dawn Magus to advance to rank 7. Even Leylin had relied on frantically plundering Dreamscape and the world of gods to make the leap successfully. Even though Sire and Daniel had a head start with their bloodlines, they still needed opportunities over a long period of time to bloom. The world of gods was a shortcut to this. As long as they managed to kill a true god and seize a portion of their god fire or divinity, they would be able to obtain comprehension in laws directly. None of the Magi in the astral plane could resist this temptation. It was the reason why so many low-ranked Magi had joined despite the shocking casualty rate. I respect your choices. Leylin looked at his sons, traces of gentleness within his eyes. However, since you have decided on this path, you will have to be prepared to undertake the responsibility of your choices, regardless of the result. Yes, sir. Their excited voices rang out. They hadn't expected things to go so smoothly. Leylin clapped his hands once both of them left. Two Lords of Calamity walked into the hall, bowing slightly towards him. Follow behind them and protect their lives. I'll raise your quota for 100 years in exchange. The Lords of Calamity were happy with that exchange, and they bowed and retreated. The protection of 2 rank 8s, that shall be it. Leylin shook his head. These kids couldn't understand the cruelty of the final war. Even with the Lords of Calamity protecting them, they could lose their lives if they were unlucky enough to meet a greater god or someone of that ilk. However, Leylin decided not to care about it anymore. He'd given them prior warnings and sent guards. His obligations were fulfilled. Discernment. The final war had returned to the astral plane, this time occurring in a desolate land where the two large worlds converged. The dusk of the gods had returned, and legions of magi and gods from various worlds fought with vigor. Morning stars, radiant moons, breaking dawns, everyone died like great batches of ants. Terrifying energy waves rocked the void practically every day, signifying the fall of beings of law. Numerous magi were lucky enough to obtain the god fires of different gods, becoming beings of laws. The same went the other way, where those who killed beings of law turned into gods or advanced in rank. The merciless war crushed all the laws of the world. Personal power was the only standard here, one that could determine everything. Leylin's zone had become a land of marshes, the AI chip clone and a large number of Lords of Calamity protecting it. They were joined by Shar's shadow wizards and the Snake Dowager's legion of serpents. Numerous intermediate gods had fallen at their hands, setting a terrifying reputation for the Lord of Original Sin. He was praised and feared by magi and gods alike. Leylin himself was stood within the Targaryen castle. The nightmare Hydra was thundering, absorbing the near-solid power of sin surging in from everywhere. War really is the best time to absorb the power of sin, Leylin sighed. The nightmare Hydra behind him seemed to have traversed some sort of boundary of the world, encountering a more abstruse and terrifying domain. The essence of the entire astral plane was gathered here, the weakest fighters being in the Morning Star realm. The negative energy gathered here was frightening, only boosted by the darkness in the hearts of the weaker magi and legendary fighters. What does even this much strength mean in front of the power of space-time? Leylin's expression darkened at this thought, memories of the two world wills replaying in his mind. Beep. Simulation of the law of space is currently at 1.97%, insufficient data. Cannot simulate the law of time. The highest priority bracket had two incredibly eye-catching prompts. I need to acquire the power of space-time to analyze it and grasp its laws. Leylin stroked his chin. The path of original sin was built upon the power of nightmares, and contained the strength of space-time. However, how do I get some? Perhaps, he suddenly recalled that the world wills, despite their earth-shattering might, weren't truly omniscient and omnipotent like the rank 9 magi of legend were. He felt like something was off. Perhaps the Overgod and the Magus will aren't actually at rank 9, only grasping a portion of the powers of space-time like I had with rank 7. All sorts of possibilities arose in Leylin's mind, causing him to brighten up slightly. In that case, Lord of Original Sin. The power of the earth sent a message of invitation to Leylin's ears at this moment. Mother Core. Leylin took a step forward, arriving underground in almost an instant. Mother Core's lava-like main body was lying there in wait, Ignox standing nearby. His guide to the subterranean world finally seemed to have gained some benefits from the war, and advanced to rank 8. Congratulations, Ignox. Leylin smiled as he greeted the being. It was just dumb luck. Mother Core helped me kill the elvish god of hate, Piflas, and I obtained his divinity, Ignox answered modestly. Leylin gave him a long look. Whatever be the case, it took some decisiveness to choose a path of evil like the law of hatred. Still, the Magus world had its fair share of magi like Ignox. The sigh of admiration didn't last long before Leylin shifted his attention elsewhere. Mother Core, is it the appointed time yet? Yes, and I hope to get your help. Mother Core's tone was very humble. Leylin was her equal in strength, and he had the Lords of Calamity, Shar, the Snake Dowager, and others under him. He also had an intermediate god for a clone, alongside the outreach of a huge organization that exceeded hers. He played an important role to the Magi, occupying a position of power. His suggestions were taken very seriously by the entire alliance. Please speak. Since she'd been helping him all this while, Leylin didn't mind giving her some help to bind their alliance further. I wish for your help in killing the Earth Mother, xianxia. Mother Core spoke in a low voice, but Leylin didn't look the least bit surprised. Mother Core was already at the peak of rank 8, but her path was limiting her advance. It couldn't hold the power of space-time. Now, however, as long as she devoured the greater goddess xianxia, she would be able to make up for the defects in her own path with the power of the earth. This would make her foundations perfect, and create a better basis upon which she could grow in strength. The chance to compensate for the issues in one's path was incredibly rare for peak rank 8 magi, something that couldn't be given up on. Any price was worth praying for it. Have you found traces of her yet? xianxia was a goddess on the same level as Sylvanas. Divine rank held no meaning to them, because they already stood at the peak of the gods. They were only second to the overgod himself. If he needed to deal with an existence like that, even Leylin had to be cautious. Of course, she's an important asset, so she needs to be at the most intense battlefields. Mother Core waved a giant screen into existence, countless hills forming a general map of the battlefield. The green regions have the least intense battles, while red is places both sides are vying for. The darker the color, the more intense the battle. Mother Core pointed at 3 areas that were almost purple on the map: Gale Gorge, the Dark Cage, and your own swamp in the Blade Hills are the areas with the greatest amount of activity. My information says xianxia is at Gale Gorge, and I've already applied to be stationed there. Is that so? Leylin stroked his chin, muttering to himself while looking at the map. I defend Blade Hills alongside another peak rank 8. We just taught the gods there a good lesson, so there shouldn't be any large battles in the near future. However, I have few troops I can assign. How about this? I'll give you a portion of my runes of sin. Call for me, and my true body will head for Gale Gorge immediately. Making a deal with Mother Core and discussing a few other issues of cooperation, Leylin's figure disappeared from the underground, leaving Ignox and Mother Core behind alone. You should make some preparations too. Ignox respectfully bowed and left as he heard those words, the black ring on his body glistening even more intensely. The divine kingdoms at the side of the gods were filled with greenery, birdsong, and the fragrance of flowers. I hope you understand your role, xianxia. Flowers bloomed into the face of Sylvanus. Without his true body, he naturally had a better understanding of the path of nature, becoming the goddess guide. Of course, tempting Mother Core and killing the Lord of Original Sin at the same time would be good. xianxia spoke up, radiating earth and divine force. I'm interested in the core of her path as well. Keep in mind that both of them are peak rank 8s from the Magus world. If we kill them, it'll be a huge blow. Sylvanus looked grim. This mission is very important, so there will be other gods aiding you. I understand. xianxia sounded serious as her true form melded into the earth. It was not just the Magi that wanted to hunt the gods. The gods, too, were coveting the Magi's forces of laws, and battles filled with schemes and traps began to spread across the Gale Gorge. The Nightmare Hydra hissed from atop the Targaryen castle, absorbing the power of emotions from the astral plane and more importantly the Nirvana battlefield. It was like a black fog, spreading across the battlefield to monitor everything. A power of envy and greed is aimed at me. The heads of greed and envy suddenly opened their eyes, the ice-cold pupils concealing threads of emotional force as they soon entered the heart of a certain someone. Hee, so it's you, Leylin snickered, and circled above the battlefield. The Nightmare Hydra that fed on the power of emotional force was like a spider queen in a large spider cave, not even the slightest of movements missing his attention. Even as an existence of laws, as long as there was a gap in one's soul, they would also be affected by the power of sins. However, Leylin had always kept this secret well, using it as a final trump card that could turn the tables. Now was the time that he could make use of it. The earth goddess xianxia, god of nature, Sylvanus, and Leylin stroked his chin. How should I make use of this ambush? Or, perhaps I should do this. If this plan succeeds, there's hope for the final war to end within a century. An intricate plan began to form in Leylin's mind. This was not all. He continued to manipulate the web of emotions and send certain complex feelings out. It began to affect the judgment of some beings of law. With Leylin's current strength, even another god of prophecy would only see a haze in his future. Appearance violent winds swept across Gale Gorge constantly, forming a terrifying storm that possessed the power of laws. Even Magi of laws wouldn't be able to hold on for long in this place, making it a choke point where the armies of the Magi and the gods faced off from opposite ends of the canyon. Dazzling runes were emitting energy midair. Rumble. The earth whistled at that moment, the entire land trembling as large chunks of black granite condensed to form a female voice in greeting. Mother Core, you're finally here. A few beings of law flew out from the Magus camp, shockingly led by the Darkness Lord. Here, these belong to you now. The Darkness Lord had a grimacing expression as he passed her a seal. Also, you need to give half of the production of Gale Gorge up to the Alliance. Everything else belongs to you. Although there were no traces of life within this land of death created by the two world wills, there were in fact other treasures. The Magi and gods realized that the place had an extremely high elemental density, producing veins of precious ores. Of course, even the most precious of stones was of no value to beings of law. However, some items even a peak rank 8 couldn't let go of easily. Gale Gorge, for example, produced some sort of wind elemental crystals that could contain fragmented power of law. It could give one instant success in entering the realm of laws. Leylin speculated that, as the origin of such large worlds, the two world wills were overflowing with excess laws even if they were in slumber. They'd spread out these laws in crystallized form during fighting, something completely normal for them. However, such a normal thing was an unexpected surprise for the combatants. Even if a magus couldn't utilize these crystals, they could hold onto them for future generations or exchange them with other beings. There were even rumors that fragmented laws of spacetime were being produced in the depths of Gale Gorge, something that the peak rank 8 magi were unable to resist. Several investigations had revealed 3 possible locations of these spacetime fragments, the same 3 regions becoming the primary battlefield between the two sides. This was how Gale Gorge, the Dark Cage, and the Battle Hills became the Nirvana battlefield. However, despite being at the swamp of the Battle Hills, Leylin didn't have good luck. Although he'd mobilized all his subordinates, he'd yet to see even a shadow of spacetime laws, instead finding several fragmented laws of other domains. These were sadly of no use to him, only to be added to his treasure vault or exchanged with other magi. Mother Core had made several secret transactions in order to be allocated here, paying a huge price. I'm sure the Earth Mother xianxia is currently in the opposing camp here. The kind of divine force coming from there is not something normal gods can wield. Having known of Mother Core's target, the Darkness Lords voluntarily sold her a favor. She seems to be fond of entering the Gale whirlpools in search of crystals, attacking our men single-handedly. I see. Once again, I thank you for your assistance. The Magus world shall eternally remember the friendship of darkness, Mother Core guaranteed. A huge core emerged from the earth, spreading its infinite roots out into the land. Despite being tougher than magic alloy, the ground couldn't stop Mother Core from taking root, spreading across the entire camp to put it under her control. The range of her detection tendrils spread out unceasingly. I sense a problem, Ignox snorted from behind her. Do the gods treat us as fools with such an obvious trap? Of course, I know that too, but I can't wait anymore. Mother Core's huge eyes seems to be trembling slightly. I need her divine force to make up for my lack of foundation. This is my only chance to advance to rank 9, nobody can stop me. Definitely not. Alright, we need to call for reinforcements if things escalate. Ignox shrugged his shoulders. No matter what, we outnumber them. We should use our advantage and push forth steadily, making all schemes and tricks useless. You're right. Mother Core agreed, the fiery thirst unconcealable in her eyes as she looked towards Gale Gorge. A dark web of negative emotions had spread throughout Targaryen Castle, allowing Leylin to absorb the essence of original sin without end. He grew stronger by the day, the nightmare hydra located at the core of the web seeming more and more unpredictable. Hiss. The central devouring head of the nightmare hydra suddenly opened its vertical eyes, showing a puzzled expression. Whoosh. Large amount of black mist condensed as it transformed back into Leylin, emotional energy forming dark luxurious robes that draped across his body. The silhouette of the hydra flashed within his eyes, as numerous black hairs seemed to connect themselves to all the emotions in the world. Wielding the power of Shar's shadow weave, and having controlled Mystra's powers previously as well, Leylin was familiar with the architecture of energy networks. Leylin's third eye opened up in the midst of his devilish eyebrows, the void twisting to form a rune. Save me, a gust of weak emotional power was transmitted from within, carrying fear and urgency. Mother Core. To think she was trapped in a Gale whirlpool. They've finally decided to act. Leylin sighed. He'd been somewhat shocked by the amount of strength the gods had been able to display. Mother Core was a peak rank 8 existence, and it was 10 times more difficult to trap someone than to kill them. Leylin. A black secret imprint twisted behind Leylin's hands. This is Ignox. Mother Core and I have been trapped within Gale Whirlpool. This was a trap. Shantea and Sylvanas have revealed their hands. Please contact the Alliance as soon as possible, and save us. We can only last another 30-hour BZZT damn, they're interfering with the connection, it's going to. The imprint suddenly shifted to static. The rune flickered a few times, before dying out completely. Damn it! Leylin cursed, and had a clone appear within the Magus conference. Mother Core and Ignox fell into a trap. We need to send reinforcements. There were only a few figures present in the conference right now, seeming empty and lonely. Kiki, isn't this the Lord of Original Sin? You are here to request reinforcements. Unfortunately, the majority of other peak rank 8 magi have been allocated missions. Of course, if you don't mind, my true body can always be dispatched. Distorted Shadow appeared, clearly amused. Such a coincidence. Leylin took a deep breath, and stared coldly at Distorted Shadow. Magi always placed importance on their own interests. Regardless of their former relationship with Mother Core, if they lacked the strength to save her from her plight, not many would be willing to take action. This was how they'd watched the Chaos Lord and Evil Filthy Eye fall. Knowing this, Leylin stopped trying to get more reinforcements. He directly disappeared from the conference hall. Hiss. Almost all the Magi near Targaryen Castle saw a marvelous scene. The silhouette of the terrifying nightmare Hydra shot out from its abode, moving with determination as it instantly disappeared from the sky. Lord Leylin. Most Magi identified their lord, bowing respectfully. Few panicked. Kiki, as expected, he has dispatched his true body. Distorted Shadow's true body surfaced somewhere in the void. It's as you said, he's proud and arrogant. Another black silhouette spoke out, golden light within his eyes. He's the Lord of Sin, of course his laws will influence him. The influence of the 7 deadly sins isn't easily eliminated, not to mention I amplified it 1,000-fold with my distortion power. Distorted Shadow snorted coldly, we shouldn't underestimate him. I've suffered time and time again at his hands. You can rest assured. Don't you know the forces we've dispatched this time? The Black Shadow with golden eyes guaranteed. We've never underestimated the Lord of Original Sin. The power of a peak rank 8 combined with his prior feats, no god will take him easily. There seemed to be a sadness within the Black Shadow's voice. On the other hand, for you to be willing to abandon the Magi and join us gods, it looked at Distorted Shadow. Once this operation succeeds, we'll begin your ascension to become the god of chaos. You'll be able to become a greater god easily. Chaos. A spoil of war stripped off from the original Chaos Lord. Kiki. I like the sound of it. Distorted Shadow's owl-like voice resounded, as his silhouette disappeared. Show the Magi at Gale Gorge had fallen into chaos with Mother Core and Ignox being ambushed. The gods launched an attack on them, divine light shining down on the area as angelic holy spirits swarmed the skies, singing praise of their gods as a light of purity raised the Magus castles. Hiss. The void split apart at that moment, revealing the figure of a nightmare Hydra that covered the skies. It's the Lord of Original Sin. The Magi rejoiced. On the other side, the petitioners and holy spirits showed fear in their eyes. After all, this existence that had once swallowed the sun was still burning in their memory. That fear was etched deep inside their hearts, and now it had grown into full-fledged terror. Original Sin. The nightmare Hydra hissed, and dense clouds began to envelop the battlefield. Holy spirits, petitioners, even the beings still within the divine kingdoms found their expressions contorting, as the negative emotions in their hearts were magnified over 10 million times. Their eyes grew bloodshot. Arg! A holy spirit roared, and his body was split into 2. A dark beast clawed its way out, possessing the power of hellfire. Servants of Original Sin. Attack. Large numbers were turned in an instant, and the dense army of the divine actually turned around to greet their new lord. It charged out under the command of the nightmare Hydra, heading for its original camp. Cries of anguish rang out, and the magnified emotions were absorbed by a rejoicing Leylin. Leylin, Lord of Original Sin. Leylin, Lord of Original Sin. Leylin, Lord of Original Sin. A great number of Magi cheered, their voices heard above all other commotions. The nightmare Hydra didn't stop there. The third eye of the devouring head showed itself, looking towards a certain part of the sky. Kacha. The law of devouring broke the void, revealing several flustered gods. Stay. A sharp silver blade flew out of the snake's jaws, piercing through the middle of a god's eyebrows. Bang. The god's eyes were full of shock, turning sluggish as his divine body fell down. 7 sins had already destroyed his everything, wiping out all chances of his resurrection. Lathander. Several gods seethed in fury, yet they did not tarry as they beat their retreat. Lathander. The Morning Lord. Becoming a lesser god after the sun was extinguished, what useless trash. Leylin didn't feel much joy for killing a former greater god. He instead shifted his glance towards a rank 7 Magus, pulling the man closer. Where's Mother Core? Even as an existence of laws, the rank 7 felt fear seep through his entire body in the face of the nightmare Hydra. The Gale Whirlpools, he stuttered out, here's a map, my lord. This old Magus had a cap of spikes on his head, and his beard was now quivering as if the nightmare Hydra would gobble him up at any second. After all, he was just a rank 7 Magus, and this existence before him had killed a lesser god effortlessly just like that. Well done, I'll leave the remaining tasks to you. The dark mist covered the map, and the Nightmare Hydra's figure vanished immediately before the old magus, entering Gale Gorge. The blades of wind that could repel beings of law couldn't even create sparks on the Nightmare Hydra's scales. As expected of a peak rank 8 like Leylin Farlier, the most outstanding magus in the astral plane, the old magus muttered, feeling extremely discouraged. Gale Gorge. Feeling the ever-growing pressure within Gale Gorge, Leylin sighed. The valley was littered with azure tornadoes that could swallow up beings of law. The boundless area seemed to contain multiple smaller planes, just like a giant maze. Even powerful beings would get lost here without a map, which Leylin fortunately possessed. He stepped forth, fearlessly, his current strength ensuring that there wasn't much in the world that could stop him. The Nightmare Hydra bulldozed through the region, crushing many smaller planes into pieces as it created an extremely safe straight path. Whirlpool 3, I'm here. Leylin felt weightless as he jumped into a huge whirlpool. The eye of the storm was devoid of the frightening winds and thick walls that blocked all entry. Mother Core and Ignox. Leylin immediately saw two large figures sealed in thick world crystals, surrounded by numerous gods with auras powerful. Just standing nearby could cause one to be frightened. Xianxia, Tempest, Tyr, and Sylvanas, the Nightmare Hydra howled, spitting out a horrifying amount of destructive power from its 9 heads. The gods quickly retreated as it began to shrink, condensing into Leylin's normal form with 7 sins in hand. Break. 7 sins whistled, its sharp blade ramming into the world crystals. Ka-cha, ka-cha, a web of cracks spread along the surface of the crystals, before they rumbled and exploded. Mother Core's true body burst out from within, accompanied by Ignox. You did well, Leylin. Mother Core gazed at Leylin in delight. However, her eyes suddenly showed an intense emotion. No. Right at the moment they were saved, Ignox's face was shrouded by a terrifying darkness. A power of distortion formed in his hands, revealing a spear as sharp as could be. The full power of a rank 8 magus thrust it into Leylin's chest. Iker's Thorn. Mother Core cried out, the majestic power of earth pushing Ignox away as disbelief filled her eyes. Why? Ignox, why are you doing this? Kiki, you're asking me why I'm doing this? Ignox laughed maniacally, pulling off his black cloak to reveal the essence of distortion. The rings of power grew more and more terrifying, and his aura eventually shifted into another form. Distorted Shadow. A phantom hydra snarled from behind Leylin, a few of its heads sinking down. His hands filled up with the power of sin as he pulled the dagger out, his eyes on Distorted Shadow. Was Ignox a clone, or did you use your powers to consume him? His words revealed an astounding secret. The rank 7 wizard known as Ignox, always staying within the Magus world, was actually controlled by Distorted Shadow, perhaps even as a clone. Is there a difference? Boundless distorted shadows filled the void as his true body descended. The black rings melded with Distorted Shadow, revealing that the two were of the same essence. All I know is that all of you shall fall here. Fusing back with Ignox, Distorted Shadow became even more difficult to comprehend. He seemed on the verge of reaching peak rank 8 again. He was initially an incomplete conscient. Even after devouring the god of murder, Sirik, and making use of his essence to recover, he'd only temporarily regained his status as a peak rank 8. He was still a ways to go from true peak rank 8 power like Mother Core. Now, however, his might exceeded that of Mother Core, closing in on Leylin's peak prowess. Mother Core, and the Lord of Original Sin. The two extreme powers of the Magus world. I see the rise of the stars from your death. With the 4 gods present as well, Leylin and Mother Core were heavily surrounded. Rumble. Sylvanas will descended amidst a green light. The leader of the gods brought with him the power of the 4 elemental planes. Wind, earth, water, and fire. The 4 elemental gods had descended, forming a terrifying seal once more as they broke off all chances of escape. Gods. Mother Core gazed at Distorted Shadow, seemingly in disbelief. For the sake of internal conflict you're actually willing to betray us and side with the gods. The fight between Leylin and Distorted Shadow had only been a conflict of interest before. Now, however, Distorted Shadow joining the gods would make him the archenemy of all magi. How can my tolerance and greatness be estimated by you? Distorted Shadow laughed maniacally. I will soon become the god of chaos in the world of gods, still retaining my powers as a magus. I am the only one qualified to reach the end of the final war, obtaining eternity. The distortions around Distorted Shadow's body began to go berserk, representing the agitation in his mind at this moment. Killing the 4 elemental planes surged, becoming the essence of a seal powered by the cries of the gods. Even then, Distorted Shadow's laughter was more piercing than everything else. Before this, were you the one who revealed the two-world plan and caused the fall of the Chaos Lord and evil Filthy Eye? Struck by a powerful weapon like Iker's thorn, Leylin now looked rather pale. Still his eyes emanated a brilliant luster, even as his true soul of original sin was weakening and the phantom hydra behind him withering away. Yes, Distorted Shadow did not hesitate at all. Who told the Chaos Lord to block my path? The law of chaos belongs to me. Besides, only the fall of two peak rank 8s could show my sincerity. I even tried to scheme against you, but, Distorted Shadow glanced at Leylin, as if disappointed at his failure in doing Leylin harm. So, during the Magus conference, did you use the power of distortion to cheat the oath? Leylin deduced. That's right. Ask me if there's anything else you're unsure of, I'll tell you everything. Whatever it is, from here on, all traces of your existence shall be completely wiped out. You shan't even exist in the river of space and time, there's nothing else. A smile appeared on Leylin's face, causing Distorted Shadow to suddenly have a bad premonition. You lot heard this, right? Yes, very clearly. A couple of whistles sounded in the air, and another nightmare hydra came into the shattered space. Numerous peak rank 8 magi made their way here, protected by the power of original sin. The Darkness Lord, the Tree of Life, the Blood Knight, even another Leylin appeared, seeming completely unharmed. The appearance of so many peak rank 8 magi seemed to destroy the gods' glory, and Distorted Shadow shouted in derangement. Did you think that just your powers of distortion could deceive the true soul of a being of laws? The Leylin next to Mother Core sneered furtively, his body dispersing and turning into a dark bloody mist of original sin. Even if I specifically showed you this move, you failed to consider I might be using it. Leylin looked at Distorted Shadow like one would at a moron, and the Magus started to cry out in insanity. Impossible. Why did it turn out this way? I already used the power of distortion to deceive your soul. No. Original sin. You finally noticed. Leylin gazed at Distorted Shadow with pity in his eyes. Your power of distortion lost to my power of original sin in the contest, and I fooled your true soul. How's that possible? Distorted Shadow was most proficient at using the power of distortion to silently affect other beings. Planting a seed of distortion in Sirik, corroding and devouring Ignox, and his various setups for Leylin were all proof of this. However, with 7 sins supporting it, the power of original sin had extraordinary effect on the mind. In the clash of these two forces, Distorted Shadow had been defeated completely. He'd failed to deceive Leylin's soul, instead being trapped under an illusion himself to reveal all his schemes. Being defeated in the area he was most proud of, and defecting in front of so many magi, this was the greatest humiliation and blow Distorted Shadow ever faced in his life. I will kill you, all of you. Distorted Shadow had completely gone insane. I should be the one saying that. I shall be the one to judge you for your sins. Leylin waved his hand. Bang, bang, bang. The 8 Lords of Calamity appeared one after the other, followed by the AI Chip Clone and the Snake Dowager. The number of rank 8 existences present caused the gods to turn grim. For the sake of victory, and his own safety, Leylin hadn't hesitated to give up his swamps and gather all his people here. In the name of the Allied Magus Conference, I hereby announce that Distorted Shadow has renounced the path of truth and given up on the glory of the Magi. He is no longer fit to be called a Magus. The Darkness Lord announced, from here on, Distorted Shadow is a lapdog of the gods, and the enemy of the Magi. The plan failed. Retreat. Sylvanus. Conscient descended with green light, save your strength. What are we waiting for? Now's the best time. If we take them out we'll save hundreds of years in the war. Leylin leapt out and exclaimed, 7 sins emanating a demonic luster. Everyone, act according to plan. The clone bellowed, light flashing in its eyes. Although the Lords of Calamity were strong, they had to join forces to survive amidst peak rank 8s and greater gods. With the bloodline as a foundation, the Snake Dowager opened her arms, and the ball of snakes that was her true body appeared, hissing and roaring as it surged with bloodline force. With the power of Calamity as the structure, the 8 Lords of Calamity roared in range, forming 8 different nodes of a formation as they balanced perfectly with the snakes. Bloodline Calamity. The AI Chip Clone was at the center, using its terrifying computing abilities to tune the might of the 9 beings of law. It synergized bloodline force and the powers of Calamity, forming the ultimate killing move. Crimson crystals fell from the sky like snow, immediately defending against the attacks of Tyr and Tempest. It created a unique space around it, possessing a trace of spacetime power that separated the two gods from Gale Gorge. Leylin soon moved out, 7 sins in the form of a crossblade. He guided the uncountable crystals in the sky, sending them hurling down on the gods like hail. Pride Guard. 7 sins turned into an armor that deflected Tempest's final attack. Leylin then drove the crossblade that carried the power of blood and calamity through his forehead, destroying his true soul. Silence in Death activated, ensuring no chance of Tempest ever resurrecting again. Vile Magus. You have killed yet another of our ranks. Even the Styx cannot wash you of your sins. Tyr bellowed, but he continued to retreat. The only thing he was feeling now was regret. If he could go back in time, he swore he'd have given everything to kill Leylin at all costs. However, Leylin did not give him this chance. Tyr, Mystra's ally, today marks the end of our conflict. 7 sins morphed through its various forms, eventually settling to become a black-horned hammer. Fury Amplification. Blessing of Greed. The hammer crushed down, carrying a power that could destroy everything. Tyr screamed like a damsel in distress, as he frantically fled backwards, but he couldn't escape the joint attack of 10 rank 8s, countless crimson crystals sealing off his path, causing him to accept his fate. Boom. The divine weapon in Tyr's hands cracked in its clash with 7 sins, unable to bear the burden. The hammer soon smashed Tyr's head in, and destructive force ravaged the god of justice. Bang. Everything soon returned to normal, but there were no more signs of Tyr in this world. 7 sins cried in victory, its whole body shuddering to make its satisfaction known. Gluttony's devouring had absorbed the powers of 2 greater gods, actually making it feel bloated at the moment. Crash. The barrier of spacetime broke apart, and Leylin moved out only to see a startled expression on Distorted Shadow's face. He was in the midst of trying to break the barrier, trying to assist the 2 greater gods. Why are you that surprised? 7 sins turned into a fine longsword in Leylin's hands, letting out a crisp ring. Tyr and Tempest, these 2 greater god actually died just like that. It wasn't just Distorted Shadow. The other gods, even the Darkness Lord Leylin had brought along, was dumbfounded. Distorted Shadow reacted quickly, giving up on the fight to retreat immediately. However, Leylin would never give him this chance. 7 sins absorbed too much energy, let's use this chance to unleash it. The crimson barrier appeared once more, this time sealing Distorted Shadow. Leylin followed him in. 7 sins had a network of veins on its body right now, squirming with excess energy. Seeing Distorted Shadow ahead of it, it roared loudly. Energy release. The Battle of Gale Gorge would be passed down as an important turning point in the second final war. The gods had lost xianxia, Tyr, and Tempest, and their elemental gods were gravely injured. Their double agent had been hunted down and killed by Leylin as well, delivering a heavy blow. From then on, the Magi used their various advantages to continue the war. As for Leylin, the main force in this battle, hymns of his prowess were passed down through the astral plane. His legend would not fade for millions of years. Death. So the hidden thorn was taken care of. Regardless of what others thought, Leylin was currently in an extremely jovial mood. Having killed Distorted Shadow, he felt like his soul of original sin had grown purer, bringing him closer to the threshold of space and time. Having devoured 3 peak rank 8 experts, he'd felt an indiscernible upgrade to his true soul. Everyone else wasn't injured, and even if Mother Core has to nurse her injuries for a while, she did have gains in the gorge. Leylin rubbed his chin. Mother Core's battle was extremely maniacal this time. She'd given her all in order to stop xianxia from fleeing, suffering severe injuries. It took Leylin's assistance for her to kill the Earth Mother and devour her powers. This was going to be a great benefit. Once she healed, Mother Core would be a step closer to rank 9, able to try and use the powers of spacetime. It's time. Leylin sighed and walked out. Let's begin the true plan. The underworld of the gods currently stood opposed to him in the swamp, the vast Styx like a moat that stopped any Magus attacks. However, the Nightmare Hydra roared into the skies like thunder at this moment, charging in without the slightest hesitation whatsoever as it stirred up huge waves. The corrosion and attraction of the underworld had no power over Leylin. Crash. Leylin broke the defenses of the Styx instantly, entering a land very similar to the underworld. Lord of Original Sin, a greater god surrounded by the laws of death, walked out from his palace, shock in his eyes. This was Kelemvor, the opponent Leylin was guarding against. His shock was not a pretense. Even if the Magi had obtained victory at Gale Gord, they'd also suffered severe injuries. Rumor had it that Leylin blocked xianxia's final attack to protect Mother Core, or both the beings who used the power of the earth would have ended up dead. However, Leylin seemed to be in his peak form here, showing no signs of weakness. Die. The nightmare hydra hissed, and a silver light shot out of its vertical eye as it carried the powers of illusion. Arg! Don't dream about it. Kelemvor tried to put up a final struggle, but a layer of shadow had appeared on his body. This shadow had the same face as Kelemvor, but it was filled with pride and envy. Hee, arrogant god of death. So you have always been jealous of Jurgil's power and might, and feel like a stray dog that could be left behind at any time. This was the influence of Leylin's powers of emotions. He planted the seed of original sin within Kelemvor's body, dealing with him like distorted shadow dealt with Sirik. He stole a large amount of Kelemvor's divine force, binding his divine body. Boom. 7 sins turned into a silver arrow that pierced through Kelemvor's skull, immediately causing the fall of this greater god. Leylin closed his eyes, feeling his weapon greedily absorb the law of death and nourish him. Leylin's powers had long since surpassed Kelemvor's, and the only reason the god had still been alive was because Leylin was toying with him. Now that he was serious, the greater god of death was no match for him. Even 7 sins has Sloth's recovery as an ability. Do you think the Lord of Original Sin, someone controlling the law of Sloth, would take any time to recover from injuries? Leylin looked over at where Kelemvor once stood, speaking in a tone of mockery. However, Kelemvor was already wiped off the face of space and time, losing all traces of his existence. Without the assistance of a rank 9 he could not be resurrected. Hiss. The nightmare hydra reared its heads and roared. Lightning, poison, acid, flames, all sorts of matter were spewed from its heads, the only common point being the powerful destructive properties. Kelemvor's armies were devastated, the land ravaged as his divine palace and his petitioners and holy spirits within taken out. After everything seemed to return to the beginning of the world, the figure of an ordinary old man dressed in linen appeared in the void. He stood there quietly, not emitting a trace of a powerful aura. The only distinct thing was his eyes, which seemed extremely bright. Jurgil, I still thought you would help that student of yours. The nightmare hydra shrunk under the mist, turning back into Leylin. Even a god of death must die, such are the laws of the world, Jurgil said in a discerning tone. Although this god had handed most of his divinity and divine force to Kelemvor in the past, Leylin didn't dare be complacent in front of him. He sensed that this opponent would be more powerful than the elemental gods. You should know my goal by now, right? Leylin waved his hands, and the powers of original sin sealed the area, creating an illusion that Jurgil and Leylin were just staring at each other in confrontation. Of course, your search for truth and eternity, even as a god, I'm influenced by your perseverance. Jurgil smiled gently, this endless life allowed me to learn more than the rest. The Overgod and Magus are currently in the core of the Nirvana battlefield, locked in battle. The turbulent currents of spacetime there will make it difficult even for existences like us to break in. You need my help, Magus. Jurgil looked at Leylin. This primordial god of death evidently didn't share the gods' loyalty towards their world will. He was instead similar to Leylin, wanting to ascend himself. Indeed, this was Leylin's purpose in coming here. For the sake of advancing to rank 9, he didn't mind allying with a god. Very well, follow me. Jurgil parted the river with his arms, revealing a path to the core of this battlefield. The purging powers of the sticks had no effect on Leylin's body of original sin, causing his face to change. The core of the Nirvana battlefield is protected by the ultimate defenses of the astral plane. Even having spent so much time, I've only managed to open up half the passageway. The sticks brought the two to an empty void after a long journey. There were no conscience of beings of law here, only wild currents of spacetime with the power to destroy everything. The path of a peak rank 8 was the only way for one to protect themselves. Leylin could feel two overweeningly powerful conscience in the center of this void, infinitely close to comprehending the laws of spacetime yet stuck in a deadlock. The world wills were in an extremely slow process of devouring each other, powered by the inhabitants of their worlds. I'm afraid that the victor of this battle will become a true rank 9. From what Leylin could tell, these two conscients were halfway to rank 9. Only once they devoured their opponents could they break through the threshold, the true meaning of the prophecy of eternity. Although we'll obtain their favor by aiding them, the leftovers from someone else will never compare to what you earn yourself. Jurgal exclaimed, the combined origin force of the two worlds will definitely be taken by the victor, we won't have much of a share at all. Eternity will be but a distant dream, what do you want to do? Leylin asked. Ally with me, and we'll consume the powers of the Magus world and the world of gods, causing their fight to come to a stalemate. 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years, a million years, we will continuously weaken their forces, eventually consuming one of the wills each. A crazed expression appeared on Jurgal's face as he spoke of this blatant plan. He didn't think Leylin had any better options, being the strongest in his own camp at this point. If they joined forces, they could even extend the final war to 1 billion years, weakening the world wills and attempting to devour them as they made for eternity. Not a bad plan, and the success rate is extremely high. Leylin clapped his hands and looked at Jurgal. However, how will two broken worlds with extremely weak wills aid our advancement? You have a better plan. Wariness surfaced on Jurgal's face. Dense power of death circled around him, many black skeletons arising as his guards. These world wills are already quite weak. Once we devour them, we'll be able to advance to rank 9. Leylin laughed heartily, 7 sins appearing in his hands. Bang! A black tome of death appeared in Jurgal's hands, its writhing scriptures having recorded the end of all creatures. This was an overgod weapon as well. I knew our alliance would rupture eventually, but who knew it would only last this long, Jurgal sighed. You think too small, Jurgal. Millennia of seclusion has caused you to lose your boldness and your sharp mind. The nightmare hydra behind Leylin fixed its eyes on Jurgal, as if staring at delicious prey. The finale, the Nirvana battlefield, was a place created by two world wills, the most stable land within the astral plane. However, a terrifying earthquake suddenly rocked it in its entirety. Space trembled, thick and complicated chains of laws revealing themselves as they began to fall apart. The shackles that could confine breaking dawns broke all of a sudden, as the land that was more firm than magic alloy cracked. It was like the end of the world was nigh. What's going on? Why is this happening? The earth-shaking changes immediately alarmed several existences. Be they greater gods or peak rank 8 magi, everyone ignored their subordinates' injuries and rushed towards the epicenter. A strong sense of unease was spreading within their hearts. The Nirvana battlefield, the intersection of Gale Gorge, the Dark Cage, and the Battle Hills, was shaking, violent explosions rocking the lands as columns of fire soared into the sky. The heat could reduce anything to nothingness, leaving a huge dark pit that led to the core of the battlefield. Spacetime laws. The Darkness Lord muttered. In excitement, someone broke through into the fight between the world wills. Who is it? The Magi and gods looked at each other, immediately placing their suspicious on Leylin and Jurgal. A majority of the dense fog of Leylin's original sin had dissipated in this earthquake, and given the absence of the strongest members of each side, it was sufficient to explain several questions. The laws of space and time. Eternity. Let's go. The Magi didn't hesitate in the slightest as they headed for the Nirvana battlefield. It was instead the gods that hesitated, eventually following Sylvanas and the 4 elemental gods into the deep pit. Leylin. Leylin. The first thing everyone heard when they entered the Nirvana battlefield was a voice full of resentment and unwillingness. All they managed to see was the nightmare hydra roaring, filled with an aloofness despite the scales on its body being scattered around and some of its heads injured. Leylin was wielding a longsword with both hands in the hydra's shadow, having pierced through Jurgal's tome of death to directly behead him. A strong devouring power exploded forth as the god of death turned into black liquid, being greedily absorbed by 7 sins. Absorbing the primordial laws of death, the hydra rapidly healed from its injuries, growing more and more powerful. An inexhaustible body, the ultimate inexhaustible body. Nobody below rank 9 can contend with the Lord of Original Sin. Sylvanas and the Darkness Lord cried out involuntarily. Everyone is here, that's great. How could beings of law miss the passage of history? Leylin looked around him with satisfaction. Lord of Original Sins, what exactly are you planning? The Darkness Lord asked, a slight sense of excitement in his heart. Leylin turned back, releasing the power of Original Sin mixed with Jurgal's laws of death. 7 sins rumbled as it struck the barrier where the two world wills were fighting, and it began to crack. It's obviously to pursue eternity and truth. A terrifying aura exploded forth as Leylin shot forth with one final blow. Having been struck several times as Leylin guided Jurgal's attacks in their battle, the barrier finally exploded with a huge bang. It caused the two frighteningly powerful world wills to descend upon them, full of blazing ire. The Overgod and Magus will had expended much of each other's energy, but they weren't too weak yet. It was far too easy for them to suppress a group of peak rank 8s. Overgod. Sylvanus and a group of gods immediately knelt down. Mighty Magus will. Cold sweat dripped down Darkness Lord's forehead as he bowed alongside the other magi. Only Leylin stood tall in this atmosphere, looking at the glamour of the two world wills in earnest. Indeed, only wills with this much power can satisfy my requirements and allow me to advance. Leylin burst into a manic laughter, his nightmare hydra growing in size as the power of original sin was flaunted. A violent fury emanated from the two wills, like giant dragons that had been challenged by ants. A seal of spacetime was formed once more. The Magus world gazed down at Leylin, about to mobilize the law of time to thoroughly exterminate this ant who dared to resist. The time has arrived. However, Leylin revealed a strange smile at that moment. A while ago, in the 7th subterranean level of the Magus world, Leylin's AI chip clone was present here, surrounding Mother Core alongside Shar, the Snake Dowager, and a host of Lords of Calamity. You know what we need, hand it over. The AI chip clone stood out, looking at the seriously injured Mother Core. I already helped you obtain Xianxia's powers. Live through this, and you'll be able to pry into the next realm. Now that we don't owe each other, will you surrender your will fragment, or do you want to fall? Mother Core had been seriously injured in the battle with Xianxia, and all the other existences had rushed underground. There was nobody to come rescue her. Your actions make me lament. A green light flew into Leylin's hands. When faced with survival and death, she'd decisively chosen the former. Great, let's begin. Shar walked out in leisure from behind Leylin, sending a golden seed to Leylin's hands. This was why she hadn't appeared at Gale Gorge. Once the green light and golden seed came into contact, a terrifying change occurred. The seed grew instantly, growing tender branches and soft green leaves as it became a lofty grand tree. Tree of Life Project, activate. The clone laughed loudly, a myriad of threads hanging from the huge Tree of Life beginning to spread around the entire Magus world. The Tree of Life absorbed the nutrients of the Magus world, strengthening and growing. The injured Mother Core could only sigh sadly at the scene, leaving the range of the Magus world. Leylin had been pondering one question ever since his return from the Shadow World, and that was on how to deal with the World Will. The Overgod and Magus Will would definitely become a hurdle on his path to rank 9, something that he couldn't overcome himself. Leylin hadn't been able to think of a way to deal with these powerful existences until Shar's actions inspired him. Although the two world wills were powerful, they were still the same as the world will of the Shadow World. They were existences composed of the consciousness and thoughts of the entire world. The Tree of Life project could thus be used the same way. With some analysis and modification, the AI chip had refined the Tree of Life. It was already a huge tree of light that occupied the entire Magus world, and other than Mother Core and his family that had been shifted out beforehand, nothing was spared. Having been native to the Magus world, Leylin had long since initiated the mutations and implanted himself into the subconscious of the Magus world. He was even more thorough than Shar. The most difficult thing to complete the Tree of Life is existences like Mother Core, the clone muttered, but I only need 50% of the authority to influence the world will. Even if I don't occupy the entirety of the underground, Mother Core's portion makes up for the difference. Peak rank 8 existences formed a significant portion of the world will. That was the reason Leylin had been so nice to Mother Core all this while, reinforcing her when she was in trouble. He intended for success in one fell swoop. With his methods, he'd already gained control of more than 90% of the Magus world. It has begun. The chaos within the Nirvana battlefield had been transmitted over at that moment. The clone entered the Tree of Life. Bang! The glowing Tree of Life opened its crown, spreading through the world of gods as well, and started spreading throughout the gods' world. Numerous fine lights similar to willows descended from the skies of the prime material plane. Every living creature, the mountains, the rivers, the consciousness of the land itself, it was all stripped, being assimilated into Leylin. The same went for Badr, the abyss, and the celestial planes. Other than some of Leylin's subordinates within his divine kingdom, nobody was spared. Indeed, Leylin had completed the Tree of Life project in the Magus world, having tasked Shar to prepare for this a while prior. With the Overgod forcing mutations in the prime material plane to adapt it to the darkness, Leylin had been given the opportunity to take action there as well, initiating Project X. Furthermore, Leylin had just swallowed the most powerful god of all, Jurgal. With the fragments of some other divine forces, He held more than 80% of the authority there as well. An omnipresent tree of life reverently descended above the dumbbell-shaped fused world, releasing beautiful light into the astral plane. Kacha, Kacha. The gods and magi looked on in shock within the Nirvana battlefield, as the original killing intent of the world wills ground to a halt like machines without oil. Numerous roots from the tree of life slowly wrapped the two up, radiating lofty light as it took control of them. I still need the fragments of will from the surviving beings of law to completely control the world wills. Leylin's eyes swept over the gods one by one, and they started to flee in fright. Space blockade. He smiled indifferently, manipulating the overgod into taking action. The frozen space cut off the hopes of the gods, even pulling out and caging a green figure. Overgod, why? Sylvanus asked with teary eyes. Sadly, his calls had no effect on the world will as Leylin's sword penetrated his head. A small light flew out, increasing Leylin's control of the overgod. The world will's roar swept all the remaining gods away. What about you? Leylin looked to the magi native to the Magus world. Will you hand control over voluntarily, or would you prefer I take it by force? Seven Sins was dripping with blood. The magi understood the situation well, immediately handing over their portion of the will and increasing Leylin's control once more. More than 99.99% control. Leylin's gaze flickered, fused together. The two enormous world wills slowly started to merge together within the Tree of Life, as if in the process of exchanging laws. The Overgod had its laws of space, while the Magus will seemed to fluctuate in time. With my path as the lead, guided by the power of space-time, the Nightmare Hydra and the Path of Original Sin appeared behind Leylin, merging with the Tree of Life. He's advancing to rank 9. Tears appeared on the faces of the Darkness Lord and the other magi. They wanted to kneel, but the frozen space prevented from moving. They just watched on at the birth of a rank 9, as if they were on a pilgrimage. The most important requirement for one to advance to rank 9 was that their path support the laws of space and time. With peak nightmare force, Leylin completely met that requirement. The laws themselves, they would come from the merged world of gods and Magus world. The first thing he acquired was the Overgod's law of space. The blurry figure was wrapped up in nightmare force, integrated into the path of original sin. Beep. Host has devoured the Overgod. Comprehension of the law of space is currently at 100%, the same prompt followed for the Magus will as well. Beep. Host has devoured the Magus will. Comprehension of the law of time is currently at 100%, host path is compatible, space-time laws perfected. Beginning advancement, bang. A great pressure suddenly rocked the astral plane, sweeping the Darkness Lord and the rest into a random corner of the universe. Leylin's path of original sin grew larger and larger, expanding until it encased both the large worlds. The essence of the two started to merge with Leylin, as the lights of eternity gradually blossomed. Leylin's conscient awoke after an unknown amount of time. This is rank 9, he asked himself, all-knowing and omnipotent. He sensed the locations of Sire and Daniel, Isabel, Shar, and the rest of his kith and kin. They were doing extremely well in a large world. Right now, Leylin could learn of anything in the astral plane in an instant, performing any task he wished immediately. He was rank 9, the Magus of Magi, a god amongst gods. Nothing in the astral plane could deceive him, even the ancient wisdom tree hidden at its fringes. It had exuded a friendly aura, its posture humble and insignificant. So the ancient wisdom tree gave up on rank 9, allowing itself to roam across the universe. Even though its powers were close to that of the Magus will, it couldn't intervene in the real world. Leylin could now kill the tree with a mere thought. However, he didn't have any conflict of interest with it, in fact having been done a favor in the past. He thus let it live in peace. Perhaps this was a form of wisdom shown by the tree itself. Although he could meet his family with just a thought, Leylin still decided to scan his own body first. Eternity, or rank 9's truly eternal. Leylin knew he had unlimited life. Even if the Magus world and world of gods were destroyed, he would not be affected at all. However, this was only within his own universe. He now sensed many other beings outside the astral plane, possessing similar power to him. There was technology, supernatural abilities, all kinds of beings came before his mind. The more you know, the smaller you actually feel. Leylin's will had surpassed the shackles of the astral plane, entering another region outside it. He detected another universe nearby, equal in power to his own. From it he detected a familiar scent of science and civilization, and noticed the planet he'd lived on before his transmigration. I am close to eternity, but not truly there. With the laws of spacetime mastered, the next task is to create a law that surpasses all others, standing on the path of the truth. The larger the multiverse, the more there is for me to explore. Always on the pursuit of truth, Leylin found himself a new target. With a path ahead, a goal to achieve, he would never grow disheartened, never lose his motivation to forge ahead on his path. The future, it seems extremely interesting. He looked over the astral plane, seeing through everything. In a distant time, on a blue planet that relied heavily on science and technology. This world shone in its technology, almost every citizen having their own AI chip that surpassed human ability. Rumble. The skies slowly turned dark, revealing a terrifying black hole. Bees * many strange, malevolent insects flew forth from the black hole, devouring everything in their path as they left behind a trail of death and terror. Not good, the AI chip can't analyze them. Teleportation isn't effective. What in the world are those things? The Starfleet and the fighters were all annihilated. Bioweapons failed, the superhero team was defeated. Dimensional combat is ineffective, and the time machines have stopped functioning. The Federation is about to perish. A lot of news was being spread through the AI chips, causing despair to surface on the faces of this world's citizens. They'd relied on their technology to conquer world after world, developing into an unimaginably powerful civilization. How could they be so vulnerable to external attacks? You can't run away, Kyle. A face of strange worms spoke out, like a god's decree. A sorry figure escaped from the black hole. Who are you? A small boy asked, stunned. My name is Kyle, I came here to escape someone. Sorry, I've brought you trouble. An apologetic look surfaced on the silhouette's face. That thing that's about to destroy the world. The small boy was flabbergasted, but the AI chip in his brain told him this fellow wasn't lying. Who is it? Kyle smiled bitterly. It's the ultimate destroyer, the incarnation of sin, the seeker of truth, traveling the endless multiverse, the nightmare Hydra, lord of original sin. The rank 9 Magus Leylin Farlier. It's already been a year since last April, and Warlock of the Magus world is finally complete. I'm finally off the pressure of that terrifying release rate, and at the same time I haven't let down the expectations of the readers. It's a cause for celebration. Honestly, this book has achieved far beyond my expectations. We were first in the fantasy ranking last year. This is something only possible because of all the subscriptions, monthly votes, and recommendations, a glory solely belonging to the collective group of readers that have supported me. 1,000 thank yous to all of you, and a deep bow. Thank you to all the friends who've subscribed to this novel. Without you, WMW wouldn't be where it is today. In specific, thank you to the 3 sect masters Lanshi, Email Protected and Empty Mountain New Reign 2015, especially Lanshi for the support of 1,000,000 fan points. My salute to you. Thank you also to My Fault, GGQ, Silent Seas, Fate is Always Beside Me, Summer Tree 9, Ultimate Treasure, and Quietly Gently Hehe. Thank you for your support and encouragement. There are many others I wish to name for their contributions, but unfortunately, there is a limit to the number of words I have. I regret not being able to list you all. Thank you to Big Yin Yang, Skillful Fishing, Trickling Meander, as well as Single Horned Sea Cucumber, whose suggestions were extremely incisive. The wealth of information gave me a lot of inspiration. Finally, I thank the readers of the novel. Your views, recommendations, bookmarking, and subscriptions motivated me through all of this. Thank you. My knowledge is limited and my writing unskilled. There were times when things were inappropriate and poorly constructed, as well as many other inadequacies in general. I'm extremely sorry for all of it, and thankful for your understanding and forgiveness of those parts. Lastly, let us meet at my new book, Semi-Martial Artist Hero. It's the legend of a martial artist of infinity, and I look forward to your participation in its writing. Here's to more recommendations, clicks, and bookmarks. O.